Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, and say it with me everyone, Guy Gardner sucks. This is episode 427. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Matt.
Like, look, when I read that this week, I knew that was coming. However, when you said, get ready everyone, I really thought you were going to talk about October, and now it's the spooky season, and I got bamboozled, and yes.
Do you know, I've never been a big Booster Gold fan, but something about him this week was clicking for me. It was like, oh, you know what? I've been underestimating this prick.
This Booster guy is kind of underrated.
He's got some salient points that I think are important to make, quite frankly.
You know what? I hope going forward at DC, everyone kind of has that opinion on Guy Gardner, except for the fellow Green Lanterns, where the Green Lanterns treat him as, you know, the kind of embarrassing friend. That's all.
Yeah, your problematic uncle who might say something racist. You just have to like try to push him out of the closet whenever friends are around.
He's from a different time. He's 37 years old. So what different time?
Yeah, Hal's 36. That's the cutoff, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh dear. Welcome everyone to the show. It's a DC Comics podcast. We get together and talk about the books we read this week. Coming up on this week's show, it's a biggie. We got a lot of books, but we also, notably, we have a couple of big things. We've got the end of an event and the kickoff to a whole new era. We're in the all-in era. We've had Rebirth. We've had Infinite Frontier, that was one we had, and now we're into the all-in era, which amusingly there was like an AEW like short comic thing at the back of some of the issues this week, which is a weird time for it, given that all-in is something nice associated with them. But anyway, coming up
on... weird time or you know, I say weird or by design?
Possibly by design, but coming up on today's show, we have Absolute Power issue 4, DC All-In Special issue 1. That would be first, except for the fact that it has to go after Absolute Power for obvious reasons.
It's the order of things.
Yeah. Batman 153, Birds of Prey 14, Shazam 16, Justice Society of America issue 12. I assume Matt read Poison Ivy 26.
I did.
Good. We got Plastic Man No More issue 2, and Nice House by the Sea issue 3. So that's what's coming up on the show today. Yeah, I'll admit, it was a weird week for me, even though it was a big week for DC, and obviously there's a lot of interesting books, a lot to talk about. We should have some good conversations. I will admit that the last thing I wanted to do when reading my comics this week was read my comics, because I got a new TV yesterday, and all I wanted to do was go and play with that. And so it was done under somewhat duress, but hey, I did it. Like, you don't have to call me a hero, everyone.
Because I wasn't going to.
But you could. I wouldn't argue with you. Okay.
I can't wait to talk to you about All In, just because of the format of the book.
Oh, sure.
Because you read things all digitally. You're not helping out.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we got that going. So yeah, we'll get to everything, but we'll start off with the usual chit chat. Matt, how was your week?
Very long. I go on vacation after today. So because it's my birthday on Tuesday, so we're going out of town. And yeah, so this week took forever.
Hey, and Matt, you look good for 53. I just want to say it right now.
Thanks, I appreciate it. It's the skincare routine, clean living, except for Taco Bell. You know, that will aid you, depending on the food. But you know, yeah, no, just watched some movies, read some comics. I found this one from Coleman Bunn called Midnight Show, which is essentially if you mixed the movie Last Action Hero with the Universal monsters. Okay. So a couple issues into that. It's pretty fun.
I have to admit, the name Cullen Bunn's not exciting me in any form, but
no, but the art looked good. I'd have to look up who the artist is, and it's got that kind of 80s era of horror movie vibes, you know, where there's the teens and stuff starts popping off, and they realize that they're, you know, there's actually a werewolf that came out from the screen. And whatever, but yeah, so far so good.
Okay, yeah. I had a weird week. I've been very sleep deprived the last few days. But a lot of stuff going on. It's October-thon, extra episodes of Screams After Midnight, been editing those. The first like 2 of those are already out public. The third one's on Patreon already. So super busy week in that sense. Plus, I actually watched a horror movie for streamers this week that I really liked. In a Violent Nature was very good.
Yeah,
I recommend it.
Let's go.
Yeah, it was good.
It might be my favorite horror movie of 2024 so far. So, really, it's stuck with me.
It might be. I'm not gonna get. I don't know. Anyway, I'll leave it for now because I've still got plenty to see, and I'll make a big deal about actually doing a top 10 early next year. But
so I have a question because Tim reared his head for the spooky season and is requesting a Boy 3. So do you back his hopes for the Boy 3?
no. Matt, are you intentionally?
Anytime I can get you to hit that pitch, you know.
What is this shit? You know my feelings on the Boy 1 and 2.
I know. I just like when anyone asking who is this for, it's usually Tim, right? So it's good to know that because he's been pretty quiet on social media for the most part, but I think he's popping back on for the spooky season, and that was the first thing of his that I've seen in a minute that wasn't like family related. And I'm just like, I still don't know if this is a bit, and I'm afraid to ask. No one likes the Boy like Tim likes the Boy.
Oh dear. But yeah, I'd been waiting to get a new TV for a while, and the discounts and whatnot kind of kicked in. So I didn't know I was getting it this week until I just happened to check the prices on like early Thursday morning. Mm-hmm. So Friday night it arrived and was tinkering with that all last night and kind of as much as I could today. It's spectacular. I'll say it. Like nothing like an OLED now, where you got the black bars just disappear in the darkness, so it looks like your movie's just floating there at nighttime. Anyway, obviously not during the day. But no. So I've been sitting with that. Nice. I started rewatching Terrifier 2 last night, so. Getting freshened up for the third one coming out, but I do plan on going to finishing that and then probably watching something else after we're done here today. I'll get this podcast rendering on the computer and go and watch whatever. But yeah, that's my week. There's no news this week, but something I did want to bring up is apparently the spectacular failure, both commercially and critically, of Joker 2.
Fully adieu.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not given the satisfaction of actually trying to pronounce French. Piss off.
Okay.
That happened. I thought that was funny though. I'm okay. I
do too. And apparently it wasn't tested, and everyone is surprised at the critical and audience reaction. And I was like, did nobody see a trailer? Like, what are we doing?
I mean, the first one was wildly overrated. The first one was not a good movie, but people seem to think it was good for some reason.
Still, the best Letterboxd review I've ever seen is everything is shallow if you've only been in a shower.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if you've never seen Taxi Driver, maybe Joker 1 felt like it was hitting some points. But if you've seen Taxi Driver, it's this vastly... If you want a good movie about a character who was an incel long before we had the term incel... Taxi Driver's your movie. It's excellent.
Yep.
But I don't know. Just funny watching it crash and burn. But on the upside, though, this means we're probably not going to have to suffer a third one being made. Not that I'm going to watch this one. Well, Patreon will probably make me at some point. But at the very least, though, I won't have to suffer through a trailer for their third one at any point, and that's something. That's worth something to me.
For sure.
So hey. Yeah, probably should mention there's a DC movie out in some form. But who cares? Because Terrifier 3's out next week, so to hell with crappy Joker movie.
The real maniacal clown is out next week.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Art the Clown. Yes. Oh man. Now I want like an Elseworld where Joker's basically just art and he's just killing people that brutally all the time. Oh, give it to me.
Well, not even in Elseworld. I feel like there is a range to do a story like that, because I remember when we did the what was that Tom King Garrett story with Joker and Brave and the Bold?
I can't remember the actual. I can't remember the title of the arc, but the first Batman Joker meeting. Yeah, he had some. The way that King and Garrett did him, it was very art-like. I felt at moments. There was a dark humor to some of his things. So but yes. I was going to say something. I went off on that tangent, so it might come back to me. We'll find out, I suppose.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So good week, exciting week, but also a busy week, and all over the place, sleep pattern wise and whatnot. Getting into the weekend, but hey, I got through my comics. It was a bit of a tight squeeze. I was literally just finishing the last one as Matt was waiting on me to get started, which happens from time to time. But hey, we're in the show. It's time to talk about DC's new directive, their new initiative, where we're going, all that jazz, and we'll see how we fare. But starting things off, of course, is the list formerly known as the Comixology Top 10, the Kindle rankings for the week. Very curious to see how some of this DC stuff did against the Marvel books this week. So, Matt, do you have a guess for number one?
Well, here's the thing. We have a massive, special. We have the end of an event. There's an X book and a Batman book. So, decisions to be made. So I'm just going to go with my gut, and I'm going to guess Absolute Power.
That is incorrect.
That is incorrect. Okay, so next guess here. I'm going to go with the All-In Special.
It is All-In Special.
There we go.
Which they also did announce was going to immediately back to print for a second printing. So
wow.
Yeah. So
very cool.
Doing all right, I guess. Absolute Power is number 2, though.
Yeah.
So DC took the top 2 spots with those. 3 is X-Men. 4 is Storm, which is an issue 1.
Wow.
Yeah. The X-Men just does well, even when you're ciphering off the characters individually. At least for an issue 1, anyway. 5 is Batman. 6 is just Sight of America, which is impressive for that, to be honest, because it's been so inconsistent schedule-wise that I guess even just a little standalone final issue from Geoff Johns, that name is still enough to get it sold reasonably well. 7 is Ultimate Black Panther. 8 is Star Wars Battle of Jakku, Insurgents Rising, or what stupid long-ass title.
Why are we doing these such long titles right now?
Number 9 is Immortal Thor, and number 10 is Birds of Prey. So I'm glad Birds of Prey snuck on there in the top 10, because I really like that book. But DC took it's only 5 of the 10, but 1 and 2 spots included, so that's pretty good. Nicely spread out throughout the 10 as well, so not too bad. Interestingly, the next DC book is number 12, is Nice House by the Sea. I would not have expected that. That's interesting. Then Plastic Man, which is Shazam's down at 16. I wish that was a little bit higher, because I do like that book, but not bad at all. So there you go. That was a quick top 10, but interesting one all the same. So we'll get into the books. We got a lot to talk about. We'll start off with Absolute Power, issue 4. Mark Waid writing with Dan Mora on the art. So honestly, the biggest problem with talking about this, and we are keeping them separate, we're not mixing these two in, but reading all in right after it makes it almost made this one harder to remember afterwards, because we moved on. We moved on to the new thing already, so it feels weird to go back and remember this.
And I would say only having an event like this being 4 issues, I think that's part of the problem, because I felt like there were parts of this that felt rushed. And like I had to try to think of, if you didn't read any of the tie-ins, a lot of this stuff just seems to come up from quite nowhere, but it just appears, Yeah,
I was thinking about that as I was reading it as well. It's I don't know if rushed is the right word, but reliant on people reading the tie-in, because I think you kind of need to. I think this feels fine pacing wise if you read like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman alongside it, and maybe Green Lantern, and probably I never read Green Arrow. I assume Green Arrow teased what Ollie was going to do in this issue.
Yeah, I'm guessing too, because his return to the side of the Angels really feels like a lot of that stuff came in during Green Arrow, which of course I stopped reading.
Yes. Matt's showing some willpower for a change. I feel like you were forced into it though, because all these new books get announced for the next few months, and you're like,
that's 100%.
Yeah, they trimmed down.
It was that and Flash, because we all know me. I'm stubborn. So I would have kept reading, just to see where these were going.
Yeah. So I will say that, because this book starts and after Waller slapping Green Arrow, it goes to the heroes and it's like, yeah, we've got all our things assembled, but we've all accomplished their missions. Damien and Wonder Woman have freed all the heroes, and Damien makes a little joke about her friend, quote unquote, Steve Trevor. But I did sort of feel like, oh yeah, if you've not been reading any of those other books, this would all just feel like we've jumped ahead in the story. So that's a fair complaint. If you haven't read those, it does make me wonder how they're going to collect this, because if you just read these 4 issues in a straight, run, would it be satisfying or work? I don't know.
Yeah, feels like you're skipping a cutscene or something.
Yeah. It's the sort of thing where it feels like if it had been like a 7-issue book instead of 4, a lot of those side quests would have been taken, maybe got a couple of issues in the main series in between, maybe the last one and this one, or maybe sprinkled in between some of the other, I don't know. But regardless, this is how they did it. This is where we are. So yeah, ultimately the heroes just make their big assault in Gamora Island. There's a lot of fighting. They've got a whole plan to try and take out the Amazos, which does work to an extent, but it's not permanent. The other big thing, though, is that in the basement, you've got Barry trying to hold back all these evil speedsters from alternate Earths coming through this like multiverse gate. All that's going on. I think the big things for me in this, before we get to the ending stuff, is pretty much just the ideas of some of the speedsters going to help Hal like hold these speedsters back, the evil speedsters, because he's running out of willpower basically. So like Jay and like Wally like jump in and say use ours and kind of fuel him with willpower. I kind of like that as a I
always love when the Flash and the Green Lanterns interact and they have each other's back because of that that long history between the two sets of characters, like going all the way back to Jay Garrick and Alan Scott, right? Like, so that's always cool to see.
Yeah, also just the vibrant reds and greens just go well together, just contrast each other nicely. The other big thing is that Batman's plan to give everyone their powers back, I did quite like, actually. It's because it's not time travel per se, it's just basically time traveling the Amazos themselves, so that everything that they do, because part of the reason why they're so indestructible right now and why they survive the attack they get early on in this issue is because they've got some of Time Commander's tech in them, and it basically kind of takes their innards back in time. So the idea is that they're going to manipulate that to go further back in time and sort of give all the powers back that they took from people. So, which
I thought that was a pretty clever way of one-upping the Amazos, right? Where they have these essentially hourglasses built in to where if they make a mistake, they get a respawn, right? And they get to redo things. So that's why the heroes are having such an issue. Where was this energy at? Or was it flowing through the Amazos, right? Like, I don't know. It seemed kind of a very... Maybe we talk about this with Waid in World's Finest a lot. There's some Silver Agey, like, not silliness, but logical stretches to make.
Yeah, look, Waid's a very good writer, but he doesn't always feel the need to explain or have things completely work in a sort of more grounded sense.
And we'll talk about it when we get to the end, what happens with the power returning, but it makes sense for what he needs to do for the story next, right? Like, he doesn't need to over explain where this energy was, because it's just a waypoint to get to the next part of the story, which again is fine, but it is a little bit of a nitpick.
Yeah. It ends up being Oliver, like his big hero moment is he's the one that shoots the the device that's going to trigger this all off with the Amazos. So he gets his big full page spread, and Waller's pissed, and the heroes all basically just instantly win once they get their powers back. Like, they don't stand a chance. And then Waller looks like she's about to kill Nightwing out of frustration, and Dreamer is back to life and punches her. It turns out that because John kept dreaming about her, it kind of like made her remanifest from the dream world or whatever, which... Okay, fine, whatever. I'm not fussed.
Look, I'm not that familiar with Dreamer to know, right? I'm like, sure, she. If Freddy Krueger can do it, why not Dreamer? Right? Yeah. Manifest in reality because someone was dreaming of you. Cool.
So the Oliver thing, just to go back to him for a second. So apparently it was always an infiltration thing, but because Amanda Waller had telepaths that would check to see if he was being genuine. Basically, he had Martian Manhunter, who knew about this still and didn't tell anyone else, basically took it from him so that he wouldn't know that he was a double agent, but then like the mental block was on like a timer, and it basically had countdown hit 0, he remembered the plan and who, like, all his real feelings, and then that's when he sort of went against Waller sort of towards the end of it all. Batman's pissed that Jean didn't tell anyone about this plan, and he's just kind of like, hey, it's kind of ironic coming from you that you're complaining that people didn't reveal their secret plan. And Batman, and I kind of love this choice, just gives a Damien. I really like that. That's a nice touch. So that's all very nice. Yeah, you got the willpower thing going on. Barry basically says we have to close this, door to the other universe. He's the multiverse door.
Yeah.
The only problem is, though, is that I think the way I'm going to have to do it is going to lock us out of the multiverse for good. Now, it's comics, so it's not actually for good, but at least for the time being, we're going to be cut off from the multiverse.
Right, which I think is okay, because we've had a lot of multiversal shenanigans the last couple of years.
And we're kind of getting into them as well again now, but I think what we're doing for the next while is like more of a there's just one other Earth, and that's the only one we're dealing with for foreseeable future.
Yeah, because the other ones exist, right? We're not going to have interactions with our heroes with them.
Yeah. Which is fine. So that's like a big outcome of this. Waller goes absolutely nuclear, talking about how they're still going to lose. She's still influenced the world to make them hate heroes. She's still done all this. She gets super pissed. She's mad that they've done all this and that they've somehow fought back. And then the secret plan here is that young character, Airwave, was recording and sending out everything she said about manipulating the world and faking all the hero stuff, doing bad stuff. And so everyone in the world sees it, and that kind of wraps it up in a neat bow where, no, you are going to be held accountable. What you've just done has been broadcast to everyone. Everyone knows. But there's some interesting stuff in the epilogue. Obviously, first thing first, just to go through it as I'm looking at it here, Barry seems to have lost his powers, right? Closing the multiverse door is taken, which is fine because we still have all the other speeds. Wally still get his, for example. He's the main Flash right now anyway. But yeah, it seems like Barry's going to be no speeding about for the foreseeable future. No,
he can definitely focus on his career and his fiancée, because they are engaged still, I'm guessing.
Yeah, as far as I know, yeah.
So him and Iris can do things, and he can still be kind of like Flash's version. I don't want to say Oracle exactly, but he's a pretty good leader. People listen to Barry, so he doesn't have no, position within the Flash family. But yeah, definitely a weird choice. Like, I feel like that's Waid sacrificing a Flash, but still being able to keep him around, right? Because it's kind of a crisis, and it's not a crisis without a Flash's thing. So
honestly, it could just be a thing where Spurrier, who's doing Flash, wants that outcome because it feeds into his story or something. So he just said, "Hey, Waid, can you depower Barry? Just give him a reason."
Can you depower Flash? Which one? You pick. Wade's not messing with Wally.
So Waller's in Belle Reve, and she's where everyone else is, and Dreamer's there to speak to her. And the two interesting tidbits that come out of this is that one, Waller's like, "Oh, I can come back from this. Like, you know how much information I've amassed, blah 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 blah, about all the heroes." And Dreamer says, "Go on, then tell me who Batman is." And then she just sort of stands there and she can't. And she's like, "Oh, tell me this, tell me that, tell me the real name of Cyborg, tell me the I don't know, like the parents of so and so," and she can't. Basically, like, Dreamer has manipulated her powers to take away all of the data, all the information, the intel, if you will, that Amanda Waller has amassed about superheroes over the years, and taken it from her. She cannot access it, which is kind of like probably the cruelest punishment she could have done. Yeah. And this is actually one of the things here, when I got to this moment, I went, you know what? That tie-in miniseries sold this moment to me, because if I had not read that story of her starting that database when she sort of started collecting information about Batman, this moment wouldn't have landed as hard. But because they established her starting that in that mini, I thought this actually hit quite hard, that she doesn't have this information anymore.
And that's Waller's, not her superpower exactly, but what makes her special is that she deals in information, and now she has all this information she can no longer access. So what value does she have?
Yep.
So it really, like you said, it's kind of cruel, but she deserves it. So, it took the one thing that set her apart from everybody, and turned it against her. It's
worth mentioning as well, Dreamer kind of admits that the other heroes don't know she's done this, because they probably wouldn't agree to do it. So Dreamer, and it makes some sense because Dreamer was being controlled by Waller and under her thumb for a while there. And it feels like her getting to punish Waller and then doing this to her is kind of like the revenge, if you will, or the just desserts. The other tidbit here, though, is that Dreamer just kind of doesn't say it, but just implies as she leaves that there might be a bomb in the back of Waller's neck in case she escapes. And Waller yells out, "Did you put a bomb in my neck? Answer me." And she's like, so is that satisfying as a DC fan to have Waller be scared that she's got a bomb in her neck? Honestly, it kind of is, because she's been doing this to people for years.
Well, you said it also goes in with the miniseries, right? Where that was her first form of control, was putting the bombs there. So now she's had
first successful form of control. Not the first thing she tried.
right. Her first successful. But this was actually made me like Dreamer more as a character. Not that I had problems with her, but she just went kind of there. But to almost make her this kind of shadowy figure that can do these kind of things, it kind of, not that makes her a threat necessarily, but I like that there's potential for something in the future that's not just, hey, I show up in dreams and there's some weird things going on.
Well, she felt like a plot device, because it was always just she has predictions based on her dreams. This going through this with Waller and giving Waller this sort of revenge gives her a bit of character that maybe was lacking before. So. I'm definitely. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to necessarily hop onto a Dreamer book or whatever if it happens, but at the very least, but
if she shows up, it's not going to feel like a plot contrivance. It's not going to just be like, hey, she's here to make predictions. So, here and adding a little bit of a shadow operation type thing, like if she shows up working with the government or whatever, I like that for her.
Yeah. So. We're at the old Justice League headquarters next, but obviously this gets to Oliver saying, hey, the reason why this even happened in the first place is because we'd all disbanded. We have to be a Justice League. We have to put the team back together. And of course, as soon as he makes that suggestion, Batman's basically like, bitch, we already had this conversation. We already decided we're having a Justice League. Although before we get to kind of where that goes, we should mention something that's brought up here, which is that not all of the powers that went back to the right people. So I don't know if we're going to do anything with that, but there is a panel, as he says that, where Black Canary has heat vision, which makes me think, who has the canary cry then?
Yes. Who has the canary cry? And then Plastic Man is phasing through things, right? The first panel early in the book that does this is when they first get all the powers returned, right? And you have Superman, and he's all, getting that Superman pump that he gets. Yeah. But it has fire and ice, and their powers had flopped, which I thought was really smart, because those two characters are intrinsically tied to each other. They're best friends. Powers are opposite. So to see ice with the fire, right? It lets you know that something was up. And then so when we get back here, it's like, oh no, this is a bigger problem.
Yeah. So it makes me think that maybe the first arc of Justice League Unlimited might be dealing with this. Like, oh, we have to go find like who's got what and swap them around. Maybe some innocent people, or maybe even some bad people ended up with some superpowers from heroes that might do bad things with them. We have to deal with that. So it's interesting, if nothing else. So yeah, the ending is the tease for, hey, we've built a new watchtower. Go read the All-In specials. So. Yeah. So
also, Red Tornado looking like a Terminator. It says that Red Tornado has been broken beyond repair, and he's all strung up there with the exoskeleton, looking kind of creepy. Yeah.
To be accurate, it does say maybe irreparable. Yes. So which means he probably will be eventually. But,
But just the idea of him having that metal skeleton there again. Very sinister.
This, obviously, Dan Mora's art was gorgeous throughout. All the fighting was great. Particularly, I really liked the Flash and Green Lantern stuff with them holding back the evil speedsters. The Amazos fights was all right, but, we've had Amazos fighting in this story since the start, so it wasn't as exciting. But all of the outcomes I do quite like. I like everything that it sets up for the future, and I did like the end of Waller's journey here. It does feel like, okay, we can't just have her going back to being the exact same thing again, not right away anyway. And I do think her consequences here are interesting. And, at what point is someone going to come and break her out because they want her for something? And who is that? What sort of villain does that? Or do the heroes need her because she has intel on something that they actually need to save the day? I mean, there's so many possibilities where they could go with that, assuming they don't just sort of forget about it and then eventually, quickly retcon it because they want to use her again the normal way. But that's always the risk with comics. But I can't fault this book for that. That's good. But yeah, I mean, if nothing else, it was like, okay, it's teasing the new Justice League. It made me want to read all in. So Yeah. I think if I have to critique, other than what we said at the start, which was it does feel like it relied on some of the ongoing books that were tying in to kind of fill in big chunks of the story, right? And it feels like you may be lacking something if you just skipped them and went straight to, this final issue. The other thing I would say is that I enjoyed this final issue. There's a lot of great stuff in the ending, but I don't think this book ever topped its first issue because the premise was so good. The surprise attack and the heroes was so well done and well told. I don't think the actual dealing with the problem afterwards was ever quite as exciting as the initial setup of the problem in the first place. So it's still a good event. Like, I still enjoyed it. It's still it's a nice use of all the characters. It's a nice use of like setting up for the next big thing in phase. But
and and sometimes when you get to these events, sometimes it feels like there's one character that's made kind of our focal point. And here it felt like Waid was really juggling a bunch of these characters, and he did it pretty well. It never felt like, it really felt like an ensemble story, which is a pretty good skill in an event like this. Yeah,
but what I was saying though is I don't think I would recommend this as a standalone book to anyone. Like, this isn't like an Infinite Crisis where you can say this is a great 7-issue story. It's a big event. It'll feel quite epic when you read it from start to finish. It'll make, well, maybe Infinite Crisis is a bad one to start with because it's so deep into DC lore. But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like something
like this is not Blackest Night, right? Where you could kind of just hand that trade, even though it has tie-ins to Green Lantern, right? It just felt like the next chapter.
Yeah,
you could just hand that and you're fine.
Yeah, this is a little bit too reliant on the books that was tying into it and the fact that it's leading into like what's coming next. Not that you can't have a tease of what's coming next, even in a pretty good standalone book, but it's a bit too away from that to say that. But it still is an ongoing comic book. But as I'm reading everything, I had a fun time and I like what it's setting up. So
also the Mora art, right? We always talk about how vibrant and everything is, and all the colors pop and all the layouts are good. But when we get to the Dreamer and Waller stuff, everything is bathed in shadows. Yeah, and it just really adds that whole last scene. Actually, the way that he plays with the space.
There's a moment where it's like it's looking down at Waller and she's got like a spotlight around her. It's very reminiscent of Zod in that in the first Superman movie when they're on Krypton getting their sentence.
I didn't think about that till just now. But that's why it seems familiar, right? But just how everything's bathed in the shadows and all of that. It just Mora keeps just finding ways to make it better. So
I think we're going to have some more interesting things to say about the All-In special. So I think we'll just wrap up this one here. Matt, what are you giving?
I'll say it didn't go out with a bang, but it wasn't also a thud. So I'll give this the art was really good though. I'll give it a 7.5.
That's exactly what I was thinking. 7.5.
Shoot,
I think it's good. I just don't think I can quite call it great for the reasons discussed.
Yeah, I was like, do I want to give it the straight 8 or not? But yeah.
So, all right, cool. So naturally, DC All-In Special Issue 1. Scott Snyder and Joshua Williamson writing, with Daniel Sempere on half the art. Wes Craig and half the art, and then in 1 2-page spread, Dan Mora. So that's the way the art breaks down. So interestingly, so I read this digitally, and I didn't really know going in what I was getting here. It was quite clear though the way it played out. Like I was okay, I can see that if you're reading this physically, it probably flips over and you can go the other way. Blah blah blah. So the way it did it in the digital version is that so you get the first one first, which is the Booster Gold story, with obviously the JLU set up as well all throughout.
Yeah, that's the Sempere art.
Yeah, and it ends with a 2-page spread, and then what it just does is it goes back to the start. So the first page says 52 days later. The start of the second story says 52 days earlier. So I think it is meant to be read this way round. I mean, admittedly, if you're reading physically, you could probably just you might do it the other way, but.
I think you could read it either way, and the story's still going to land. It's just
for sure.
It looks at the perspectives.
But I think it works better this way around for a couple of reasons, but mainly just for the surprise of what Darkseid is, and then you go back and read the back, like how that happened. That makes more sense to me. But obviously you do have the choice. So the idea is that both stories end in the same place, and you get the big 2-page spread in the middle has like sort of like text on both sides. One side says continued in the Absolute Universe, the other side says continued in the DC Universe.
Yeah. And even down to some of the layouts at the end are they match each other a little bit.
Yes.
In the lead up to that page, which I thought was fun too.
I do have a critique a little bit about that actually, but I'll save that for when we actually get to talking about the scene. Because otherwise I did really like this. I love what they set up here. It feels like the start of a new era. And can I just say, Matt, until they brought it up in this issue, did you even remember the whole thing about like the like there's one other main world that's like Earth that's like close to it?
So yes, I did remember that, but that's because I thought like in my head that was going to be, because remember when Snyder was supposed to do Wonder Woman and then it never came out? We got the teaser stuff.
Yeah, vaguely. Yeah.
And so I had thought that's where we were going, where there was going to be this Earth that was kind of the new JSA Earth. And that was going to be the Alpha, right? Because that came first. I remembered it only in that and then never again. Because I remember we had a discussion about all this. And then never, ever again.
Yeah,
so,
this was the ends of death metal, right? For anyone who's trying to remember this. And part of the big thing at the end is they were setting stuff up for the stories going forward, is that there was a weird second Earth, the Elseworld they called it. So which is what I think I'll stick to now because it's just a cool name.
It sticks. Yeah.
Right. So the Elseworld is kind of like a twin Earth, right? And it's close. But the thing is, though, is that they set it up, and then I'd forgotten about it because they didn't do anything with it, and it's been literally years. Yeah. I was actually almost like a nice surprise when they mentioned it and went, wait a minute. So the big thing here with that, before we get to anything else, is simply that they're cut off from the multiverse. That's the current status in the DC universe, is that they cannot access the multiverse, but the one thing that they might be able to access, and they kind of do by the end of the story, is this Elseworld, this thing that's close, because it's so close in like frequency, if you will, to our Earth, or to the main Earth in the DC universe, that it's, but not only that, not only is it the one that might still be accessible, although it's very difficult, is that ever since the multiverse got cut off, something weird's going on with it. It's starting to like rev up, and like the frequency's going nuts and haywire, and there's chaos.
They say that the vibration went from something regular to something chaotic.
Yeah. So something's happened there, and then a big part of, especially the second story, is filling out what's going on with that.
What had happened, yeah.
So yeah, turns out the Absolute Universe, which is what the Elseworld is, which is cool. I like that we've been hearing about the Absolute Universe for a while, and it turns out it's this Earth that was set up years ago. That's kind of neat.
Yeah, by Snyder, so it makes sense that Snyder's leading the charge here, you know?
Yeah. No, that's cool. And then the other big thing, though, as we find out, is that this is Darkseid's Earth. Right, that's the big reveal of this issue, is that Darkseid, I mean, first of all, he's bonded with a Spectre, so let that settle in for a minute.
And he has an axe for a hand.
Right, but, well, we see how he loses his hand in the second story, actually.
Yeah.
But it turns out that the Absolute Earth is basically one that Darkseid's taken over and is built in his image. So this idea, because there's a whole speech at the end of his story where, this universe won't be based on like people striving to be the best. No, it's going to be harsher. The heroes are going to exist, but they're going to have a tougher time because their advantages are taken away. Wonder Woman's not going to grow up in paradise; she's going to grow up in hell. Batman's going to have no money, like, and so on and so on. All the things we know about the Absolute versions.
I really thought too that Wonder Woman not in paradise but in hell. I was like, that is a metal album right there. I want to listen to that right now.
So anyway, so this is the stuff we're building up to. I just wanted to get the big sort of headline sort of mentioned briefly before we...
And when they announced this, what was that, back at Comic-Con? When the Absolute stuff, I remember Snyder and Williamson both saying that was kind of the crux of the Absolute universe was that this is Darkseid. This is kind of a universe built in his image, and I didn't know what that was going to mean. And now the fact that those Easter eggs from Metal and everything else, you know, them taking that and making the story and having this polar opposite Earth, I like where, you know, the potential that's there.
I would be genuinely curious to know that if when they introduced that second world at the end of Death Metal, if this was always the plan, or if it's just a case of, we want to do an Ultimate style thing with DC. And then Snyder says, hey, I set up that extra Earth that we never did anything with. Could we use it? Like, I wonder if this was always like vaguely the intention, or if it's something that they've just said, oh, hey, we can use that and do all this with it now.
Yeah, because there's always a thing when I was reading comics when I first got into there that, like, for me, the main difference between Johns and Morrison was that Johns would take stuff from the past, right, and do things with them. So, like, they would talk about the Blackest Night prophecy, and he turned around and made a story out of that or whatever. Whereas Morrison was taking things or doing stories and leaving these little Easter eggs for other people to use, right? Like, he used Professor Pig, but then used Professor Pig that one time, and then other people have been able to do it, right? So I'm always wondering what exactly goes on here with these writers. Like, are they seeding stuff out for later? Are they leaving stuff for them to come back to? But either way, it's kind of what makes comics really cool, is like there is all these things to build on, right?
Yeah.
If you have a story idea, you can jump in kind of at any point. You don't always need to reset. So yeah.
Yeah, and for better or worse, sometimes obviously this freedom leads to messy stuff. So there's
Usually, if your name rhymes with Josh Williamson, you know?
Yeah, it's so weird to have him be the co on this, just because it doesn't feel like he's that important to get into the absolute side of things. But I guess maybe the idea is that because he's on no, he's not on Batman. I keep saying that. I said that last week as well. He's on Superman. I guess just because he's on one of the big books of the all inside. You know, if
I almost feel like they wanted Johns, but Johns is doing his own thing now over with the creator owned. Do they look at Williamson and go, "Well, you're good. You're good enough. I feel like you guys are close enough."
I feel though technically Waid is still filling this role, and because he's doing the new Justice League book, and they set that up alongside this stuff. And hell, it's the Justice League that are in this book, and it's one of the stories. So it kind of just feels like Waid, because he was doing Absolute Power, and then he was going on into his Justice League book, that he probably just didn't have time to be the co-writer on this. So Williamson just kind of got, you'll do instead, right? Waid's too busy.
And I feel like Williamson writing with there's the other thing that I like too, is that it said like that first story is listed by Williamson and Snyder, and then the other one is listed by Snyder and Williamson, right? And you can feel the difference between them, but they also don't feel purely what we would expect from those two creatives, you know. So I do like it feels collaborative too. So maybe that's kind of the vibe that they're going forward now, is that Absolute's going to be more or less more collaborative than we thought.
Well, both, all in Absolute. Keep in mind, it's two branches now. We have to.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I meant. I meant the big, huge thing, the meta concept of it all.
It feels like maybe we're back to like almost like, not that we're doing a book like that, but like the 52 era where we've got like multiple creators all driving the ship kind of thing. Yeah. Steering the ship is what people actually say. I said driving.
Yeah, you don't want to. Yeah, I don't think you drive a ship.
You can drive it if you want.
I mean, you can if it like Miami Vice. They definitely drive a boat.
So yeah, like basically the story, the first story starts 52 days earlier, is the Justice League making their new membership cards, which has got like a bit of like magic in it, a bit of Green Lantern tech, a bit of Mr. Terrific tech, a bit of everything. And it's like, hey, we need everyone. They do a little recap of like every event we've had since like Rebirth, pretty much. And
it's been a bit of a bit. Right? It's been a lot.
I'll be honest, I was looking at some of these and going, okay, I'm trying to remember exactly what some of these were. Like, there's a green volcano, I'm pretty sure that was that one that started...
Lazarus. That was Lazarus Planet.
Wait, is that what that is?
That was Lazarus Planet, yeah, because remember, he had the Lazarus rain that went down.
No, I thought this was the one that made... remember we got those... what were those old... Like, we got Sideways and all those books from it.
No, I don't think that was. That was the Dark Earth. That was from the Metal.
That was from Metal.
Stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is all post Rebirth.
But there was a mountain. There was a mountain in Gotham, which is
there was.
Yeah.
There was, and that's where the Challenger's Mountain came from. That popped up in Gotham, right? But this right here with the green, that was from Lazarus Planet. I know that much.
That feels too early in this, but yeah, they got Nightmares, which less said about that.
Less said about the better.
Beast World though, quite like. I guess that's meant to be the House of Brainiac stuff, which I guess they're counting here. And then obviously Amaze was from what you may call it.
So we have the Death of the Justice League, right, on one side, and then Lost is that Infinite. What was that? The Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths.
I get probably because the Titans were heavily involved in that, so probably.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's only the event since the end of Snyder's Justice League run then. I just assumed it was all a Rebirth and was counting things from before.
Yep.
So I see Starfire get a card, see what we call him? Speedy Arsenal. What do we call him now?
Roy,
yeah. Yeah. Robot Man declines. Metamorpho is like, maybe. Supergirl's in. Damien throws it away in tuts, because of course he does.
I love it.
Yeah, good stuff. But then it becomes a Booster Gold story, which I'm sure delighted Matt to no end. So it's a very somber Booster Gold, though. He's not in the mood to be his usual self.
No, he's been through some things, man. Booster is not about the sponsorships anymore. He's just like, I am stressed out. I accidentally became important at work, and it's ruining my life.
Yeah, and Skeets keeps trying to like sort of make him be like his old self, which was cracking me up. But he's like, nah, maybe I should just go home. Maybe it's time to actually go back to my own time period. But this is where we get the selfie though, where he says, "All together now, Guy Gardner sucks," and then all the kids say it, and they look delighted as they say it. It's great.
I didn't know him and Guy were on opposite sides of things. I mean, it makes sense, but I never thought that Booster had hard feelings about Guy.
Like I said, I think Booster. I've never quite given him the credit he deserves as a character, I don't think.
Like, I always thought Booster was dumb, but he's not that dumb.
I've seen the light. I've seen the light. Booster clearly has some layers to him that I was not appreciating. He's went up a whole rank at least. He's went from at least if he was D tier to me before, he's C tier now at the very least. Absolutely. Is he? I don't know. The tiers are. One day I think it's a special. Maybe this is something we can do as like a Christmas thing or something. Is we do like a tier list of like 100 DC characters. Just sit for 2 hours and just sit and do here's the A list, here's the B list, so on, so on.
My time is precious, and usually I'd fight against that. But I know we have such differing tastes on things.
Oh, there'd be a fight.
It would make great. Like, we might not be friends after that.
That does sound like a fun time. We'll have to note down that as a special or something to do.
And then you involve Cotter as like a dark horse. Oof.
Yeah, I don't want to. I can already hear the arguments about Kylo Rayner, and I don't want to. It's upsetting me.
But we all know he loves Jason Todd, so we'd have to talk him off a ledge.
He's like, so Jason's like at least a B tier, right? Like, I don't know about that, buddy. I
think your brain's been poisoned by all the Red Hood you were forced to read.
Let's calm down. Let's calm down a little bit.
Anyways.
So someone note that down and remind me that was an idea at some point. So he's feeling a little bit. So anyway, Superman shows up and kind of says, "Hey, that was a good job there, saving those people in that burning building." And Superman's narration kind of, it basically says, Booster's always had a good heart. He kind of gets his own way, but like he deserves a chance. And Booster gets the membership card. I love that it says access limited to show that he's not an A tier Justice Leaguer. He's definitely on the D squad.
They know Booster gets into some shenanigans.
Actually, I say that it literally says tier gamma, which is that G tier? Is that what that means?
Yeah, I don't know the Greek alphabet off the top, but G is pretty mid.
Yeah. Alpha, beta, is gamma third?
Alpha, beta, delta. I think gamma might even be fourth.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Again, I don't know the Greek alphabet that well.
Hey, that's right. They've got it right then. I said D or C tier. He's D or C tier. Like, they literally say it on his membership card.
Yeah.
Perfect. Anyway.
There you
go. So, he talks about how he saw the blank version of this in the museum and the superheroes in the future and all that, and he's all excited about it. So, we get a meeting, all the members coming to the Watchtower. We see Tim Drake there, Nightwing, Yara's there. Apparently, Renee Montoya Question is going to be like the guard of the Watchtower. That's an interesting.
Yeah, she's the sheriff. We've talked about that.
Yeah, because our new book said something about that, right? Yeah. See, this is the thing. I never remember those solicits, so it's always a nice surprise when they pop up again in the books.
As someone that loves Montoya's Question, anytime she pops up, I'm going to remember. So, and I think that's a great concept for her as well, because we've done her as the commissioner and all this other stuff, but I think here as a member of the superhero community, but outside of it as well, I think that fits her real well. And again, any Renee Montoya, I'm here for.
Yeah. So I think Waid is good at the ensembles. He loves all the DC characters. So you really do feel like it's not even just the characters from his time period that he likes. Like he puts in good bits with Damien. He has like Yara prominently front and center. It really does feel like he respects like all the new creations that have come.
I I feel like we all know he loves Superman, right?
Mhm.
But I feel like he loves DC.
Yes.
And that comes through when you have a page of them all assembled, and you just look at the, like you said, the across the timeline characters here. It's not, there's not just all Silver Age characters he really likes. It's everyone.
Yeah,
So.
I see New Superman there, but you've also got Dr. Light. I see, Yara, but I also see what other sort of deep pulls you got in here that I could point out. I guess Fire and Ice are pretty relatively deep.
Fire Knife, yeah. It looks like.
Oh, Firestorm's in there. That's not
Firestorm's
exactly
there. That looks like Black Lightning. I'm not quite sure. Steel's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard with some of these profiles.
I don't think we have to list them all, because I think the whole point of this JLAU is that pretty much any hero is technically actively in the Justice League now. Right. So as soon as they're done with their big speech, though, alarms go off. Some weird speech starts coming out of some of the characters upside down, and ultimately says Darkseid is. Can I just say that I love that Tom King Darkseid book, or Mr. Miracle, I should say, but the Darkseid book in that. The fact that Darkseid is became such a staple again of the character, to the point where here it's not only used, but is then it's manipulated by the end of Darkseid's side of the story, where he's like, no, Darkseid, was, Darkseid ends. Now it's what Darkseid can be. Kind of all that stuff. I'm like, I love that they're playing with this.
He's changed his state of being, right? He's no longer is. He is, But yeah, and I like the upside down here, because it I didn't realize this was a flip book, right, until I started reading this, and then when we got to the upside down, I was like, oh, okay, this is different. But yeah.
Yeah. So obviously they're expecting Darkseid because of what was been said, and there's some Omega beams coming out of the boom tube or whatever. And sure enough, Darkseid pops out, but he's got a cloak and some other features here, and they're like, shit, he's the Spectre. Darkseid's the Spectre. How did that happen? So there's a bunch of fighting, and effectively they all quickly decide during the fight that they're going to have to separate Spectre and Darkseid. It's the only, they're not fully bonded yet, so if they can separate them, it'll deal with everything. And ultimately, this is what Darkseid wants. In fact, he says thank you, Darkseid ends, as they succeed in this, and it creates a rift, like a tear in space-time, which is going to the Elseworld universe. And it seems like Darkseid wanted this, and they're like, shit, can we send someone through there to check out where he went and what's going on? And it turns out that the only person that is safe to go is someone who has a lot of tachyons from time travel. And who does that sound like? In walks Booster Gold. I love that Booster's been dead serious as he says, oh, someone like me. And then Skeets is like, dramatic entrance, sir, one of your best. And Booster's like, no, I'm not being silly. I'm like, no, not now. Not now, Skeets.
Well, because he knows this could be his last mission, right? His first mission as a member of the Justice League could be his last, because this is huge. Also, I don't want to gloss over that they empower Superman with magic to fight Darkseid, because that's going to be kind of an essential conceit of the other story, as Superman versus Darkseid. And then also,
but important to note though, the magic only battles the Spectre part of him. It doesn't do anything against Darkseid. It's only the Spectre element in the mix that it's fighting.
It's just there, yes. And that after that rip in space time, we've seen before, because Williamson loves to talk about Darkseid's crack.
There's Darkseid found a new crack.
I've waited since Wednesday to make that joke, so I just didn't want to gloss over it. And I got
that's fair.
So
that's fair. So yeah, Booster lands after a bit of a bumpy ride in a city that's kind of metropolis. There's a daily planet, or it may not be called that. We just see the word daily. It may have a different name, but there's a big Omega symbol on the building.
This place looks like hell.
Yeah, there's fire everywhere, right? It's really like Earth/apocalypse, and Booster has lost Skeets, and Skeets is the ticket home. Skeets is the one that's programmed to teleport him back via some tech. But he's like, shit, I think I know where I am. Now, why Booster knows where he is interesting. That is something that I'm sure we'll go into in whatever story continues this. Which I actually don't know if this is going to be in Justice League Unlimited, or if it's just going to be, we're going to be waiting a while for the event that's going to come out of it. But...
yeah, because they have teased that there's going to be an absolute /all-in
yes
thing that the the Absolute Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, all those other books are building to.
Yeah, it seems like we might be sort of laying low in this until then. Would be my guess. But basically, we see like it's like a Legion ring, but it's like it's a dark side ring.
It's got the Omega symbol, but with the star in the middle. So yeah.
And then the big reveal in the 2-page spread is that on this Earth, Darkseid has a legion, right? So it's the Legion of Superheroes, but it's a legion of, well, Darkseid, I guess. I don't know what you'd call it. It probably has a name. We'll probably find out.
I would just call it Darkseid's Legion, right? That makes it sound like, that sounds proper scary.
Yeah. So, and that's your big 2-page spread. So that's the first half, right? That's the booster GLU half of the story.
Yep.
Second half of the story, with the Wes Craig art, is the dark side of this, and it says 52 days earlier. And I like this being second, naturally, because I think going back 52 days to discover why Darkseid or how Darkseid got to that point is interesting. So it turns out he had the creator of the Mother Box build something, and we don't find out until much later what it is. But builds a machine, and he has to sacrifice his own blood to like get power it. So that's why he cuts off his own hand and pours blood into this wish machine. And that's when Calabac and like some of the other notable characters on Apocalypse like, hey, we've assembled an army of aliens. Since the heroes are weak from what's going on, in absolute power, we can go and take over Earth. And Darkseid's like, no. And the main crux of this story, and this is quite interesting, is that when the multiverse got closed off, it sent like a ripple or something through space and time, blah, blah, blah. And Darkseid got a sense of something, which is it's kind of vague in this issue, but we can kind of discuss what we think it means based on some of the things that he says and what's said to him. But he's basically realized that he's playing a role that he's supposed to be playing, and this idea that there's always a balance, and that Darkseid is supposed to exist to have this balance between the good and the bad. He's kind of necessary, but he is just fulfilling a role that he's supposed to have. And as soon as Darkseid realizes that he's filling this role, he's like, well, I don't want to just fill a role that someone says I'm supposed to have. I want more. I want to sort of go into the unknown. I want to conquer. I'm not. It basically like that. This is a weird meta way of putting it, but it's kind of like he's realized he's just a character in a comic book, and he wants to be something greater.
Well, yeah, there's that. This is Darkseid's midlife crisis.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
You're right, because they bring in this army, and that's exactly what Darkseid always does. And now, because of his tie to the universe, right? Because we've known for a while now that Darkseid is a singular entity.
Yes.
Right. There's only one Darkseid across the multiverse. And yet, there's the Omniverse, which Snyder had played with in Metal and whatnot. And so in this Omniverse, he's at the mercy of that ebb and the flow, right? So when things are going great, and the energy is flowing through him, that's where we get these big Darkseid stories and Darkseid is and stuff.
It's kind of explained later on, actually, that part of what's going on here is that because he's cut off from the rest of the multiverse, and he's the only Darkseid in the multiverse, is that because he is this like totem of existence, where he has to balance out everything and be this opposition to the good of something like Superman. But in many ways he's more special because there's still multiple Supermen across the multiverse, right? But there's only one Darkseid. Is that all of his like power had to spread out, like all of his influence and power spread out across all these universes because it had to, because he had to kind of be a force in all of them. That feeling of Darkseid had to be felt in every single universe.
Yes.
But because they've been closed off from the multiverse, all of that like energy, or whatever you want to call it, that aura has come back to him, and now he feels unfulfilled because he's just up with all this extra Darkseid,
with nothing to do.
Pretty much. So like that's kind of like what's driving him here, and he kills Calabac. Calabac's dead for now.
He's like, wait. Blood, I need more blood. You're my blood. It's like, oh no.
So he's dead, and he goes looking for someone. We don't know who he's looking for at first. We see him go around like hell and heaven. It turns out that he wanted to see Eclipso, who he calls Kala, which right,
because remember, Eclipso was the first spirit of vengeance, right? He was the in the biblical tales, he's the one that does the 7 plagues. And
I'm
all
not
this
going
other
to
stuff.
pretend to have remembered any of that. I
Yes.
just
Well, now you know, so this is why. And also it's very, here where it feels like Eclipso's also kind of a singular being, right? The concept with religion and big G God in the DC universe is the concept of the source, right?
Yeah.
Or the one above all. And so the fact that there is a source wall that divides everything, and that Eclipso was meant to be this first spirit of vengeance for the source or big G God, and that's who's standing in the way now of Darkseid.
Yeah, but anyway, like again, Eclipso's just next on the list and who he's looking for. He kills Eclipso as well. He boom tubes him to the middle of a sun, so Eclipso seemingly is dead.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing
for now. Well, because the Black Diamond's still there, right? So as long as the Black Diamond's around, Eclipso can come back.
Yeah. But we finally get to who he's looking for, and it's not really a surprise given that you've already read the first story, but he was looking for Jim Corrigan. He was looking for the Spectre, and he wants to bond with it. The Quintessence show up to try and be like, hey, yeah, like...
You can't do this.
No.
You're going against the order of the universe.
Yeah, this is bad. And then we find out what he built earlier, what he had built, which is a wish machine. He gets a wish, and you can't do anything about it, and that actually freaks them all out because they're actually quite confident when they show up. They go, well, look, the Spectre only bonds with who the Spectre wants to bond with, so there's not really any risk. But then he mentions this wish machine, and they're like, oh shit. So he's like, I wish to bond with the Spectre, and sure enough, we get this big page of the Spectre kind of being almost pulled from Jim Corrigan, and being drawn towards with all these green lines kind of connecting them.
So the wish machine, that was the thing at the center of Final Crisis, right? And Superman had to go into that.
I don't remember, but I'm glad you're saying this came up before, because it did feel a little bit out of nowhere to me. So the fact that this was in another crisis that Darkseid was heavily involved in, I like that. And
so I feel like that was a miracle machine, and that Superman. And the reason that Superman had to do it is because he would wish the best for everybody, and that's eventually what brings about the end of Darkseid. It's been a while since I read Final Crisis, but I distinctly remember that being the plot point of Superman Beyond. Oh,
it's been a long last time. It's been like 14 years since I read that now. But I think I like this side of the story as well. I mean, I like the first half probably a bit more in some ways, but I think what made this one work is that it was really interesting just trying to figure out what Darkseid's goal was and what was going on with them. Like, why does he feel like his purpose has changed? Because he's saying things because it gets to the point where he's fighting the Justice League and whatnot, and he's like, we've got this narration coming in from Spectre and narration from Darkseid kind of talking backwards and forwards, and this is where a lot of the stuff I said earlier, that it kind of explains this idea of his energy being spread out and him being like an important part of the universe, and that he should be content with being this important part of the universe. It's it's one of the most important things in the multiverse. Why can't you be content with that? And it's like, because he's had a glimpse that there's something more that he's not had access to, and that's what he wants to go do now. So it is interesting. Like, I do think it's an interesting direction to take Darkseid in. We see that kind of inside his head, or inside like the spirit of him. You see like Darkseid's spirit fighting off like lots of Spectre spirits as he's like sort of fighting to like keep control or whatever. So yeah, it's super interesting. And there's like references to like Darkseid's other big things. You see a panel that's from Final Crisis, one from what story is the Superman and Supergirl punching him from? That's a famous story.
I'm not sure. I think that was just that's one of the 70s ones, I think.
Sure, okay. I recognized the moment and went, oh, I've seen that somewhere. So yeah, but it gets to the same point where they separate the Spectre from him, and he's like, no, Darkseid ends, and then we see like this lets him go through this rift, take this Elseworld that was still forming, hadn't really settled into anything, and sort of turn it into a stable world that's going to last. And is like, no, I'm going to build a world where the heroes still exist, but they're challenged. And good isn't the default and the opposite's the villainous. No, heroes are going to be the villainous ones in a world that is fueled by, whatever. And this is where you get a glimpse of the other, the absolute versions of the Trinity. You see Wonder Woman on her like dragon thing, or whatever you call it.
Again, metal as hell.
Yeah. You see Batman with his big chunky logo fighting off some dudes.
His axe logo.
Yeah.
Oh God.
There.
And then a Superman who looks like he has lava hands.
Yes.
And lava feet. I'm like, oh, okay, this is.
Yeah. I don't think the people of this world are going to take to Superman quite the same way they normally do.
No, and just again, the point that it's almost as if there must have been a dark side, right? Because Superman was this embodiment of hope, and which was the opposite of dark side, right? Because when they talk about the equation that he's always after, the anti-life, right? It's always this thing where it's about control and the absence of hope. And so now you have Superman, who's this being of hope in this world that's all about control, right? And it's like, well, is this Superman singular, right? Like, is he the only one of his kind here now? So I like that balance that they're bringing here.
Yeah, so Darkseid talks about building this world where he can be the most powerful he's ever been, grow 1,000 feet tall. Whether he's been literal or not, we'll find out, I guess.
Yeah.
But it is worth mentioning, though, right at the tail end of this, he does say, and when I have become, because he says Darkseid will be, and when I become him, I will return for that other world and crush it. So he does ultimately want to come back to the main Earth and kill all the heroes and like finally win. So that is still part of his goal. He still wants to do that. I think it's interesting going forward what we're going to do with the Absolute Universe, because I suspect that, like, I don't think, like, I'm sure they'll fight a bit, but I don't think the whole point of it is going to be that the heroes of the Elseworld are going to be the villains per se. Like, I suspect that ultimately they're going to prevail, and like maybe with the help of the heroes in the main Earth, they'll actually like change their world. They'll resist, like, maybe the ultimate like end for Darkseid in the story is the realization that even when he built a world in his image, that eventually the heroes still found a way to like get through it and like inspire everyone or whatever, you know?
He has to still play his role, and that's where he's at, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure we're ages away from getting to that point, obviously, but it's interesting to think about. But I do appreciate, though, that like this darker world where we've got all these darker versions of characters for these different books. I do like that there's just like a big reason for it to exist. It's not just like a random thing. Oh, let's just do a dark world. No, they're building a story around it. It's all tying into Darkseid. Like, I like how it feels like a part of the current continuity as opposed to just, hey, we're doing. And this is not to shit on Marvel, because Ultimate Spider-Man was great back in the day, but it was very much. I mean, but it was very much just, oh, let's just do different versions of the characters, right? That was it. That was all it was.
And the whole point with the Ultimate Universe was, let's do these stories that aren't mired in continuity, right? And now we're kind of past that in comics, where if you have a story to tell, some of these companies just well, put it out. That's what Black Label is meant for, right? Like, we're at that where not everything has to be part of the tapestry. So Ultimate Marvel played its role, and then it started to get mired in continuity. And then the Ultimate Universe had its own type of stuff, and now they've just relaunched the Ultimate Universe, right?
It also feels like these absolute books aren't really designed with the intention of doing, let's do a classic version of these characters that isn't mired in continuity. It doesn't feel like it's doing that for a start. So that makes it different. Plus, I also do kind of like that. This idea of the absolute stuff being the Elseworld does make it feel like they're taking something that's like a big part of DC's past, because I would say that Elseworlds as a concept is a lot more prominent in DC than the what if stuff is in Marvel. Yeah. So actually building like a big long form story out of the idea of there being like an Elseworld that's actually in the canon of like, oh, there's an Elseworld and it's this other universe and it's going to play into the stories is quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, the concept of a multiverse is so baked into DC because of the Flash of Two Worlds, right? That it just feels like the Elseworld concept it's because it's not unique, right? But it is part of DC as much as some of these other things are. Yeah,
the only thing that's a shame now is that because like movies and Marvel movies, but not just Marvel movies, are really like doing a lot of this stuff right now because it's a easy excuse to have actors come back that shouldn't be back. Everyone's kind of sick of it, and it feels like a crutch, like an easy crutch to just get away with doing stuff. It just feels like,
oh, multiverse, that's a buzzword right now. How can we have our own multiverse?
Yeah, it's just an excuse to do stuff. Yeah,
and it's like, well, and smart people find out ways around it, and like here we have the Elseworld now. So yes, the multiverse is gone and they can't connect it, but there is this else world, so they can still tell a story of a different Superman, Batman, etc. Right? And they're not breaking any of that, and it does feel different and unique.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, all I'm really trying to say is that this, like, I wouldn't really be blaming anyone if they said I'm sick of multiverse stuff, regardless if it's DC or not. I really couldn't blame them if they are. I give DC a bit more of a pass, although that said, I am glad that the greater multiverse is gone. I think I like the idea of just having one alternate world that we're going to really, because I mean, we're going to have multiple books set on it. We're going to get at least 4 absolute books that are all set in the same Earth, and we're going to flesh it out. I think that's more interesting to me than a million cameos from like 50 different Earths with different versions of, you know, characters times and time over.
For sure.
Having one focused alternate Earth where we can just do one sort of like war between two worlds sounds far more focused and interesting to me than, you know, sometimes what the multiverse stuff can become, right? Obviously, sometimes it's great, but sometimes it can be a bit, just, you know, for the sake of having a million things and cameos and whatever. So, anyway, the critique I was going to mention just before the end here is that I did think it was weird that the page before we get to the 2-page spread again. So again, in the physical book, I assume the 2-page spread's just there once and you just get to it from either side. Is that the page before the end here is that it's basically just from Booster Gold's perspective again, and I thought that was a bit weird. I thought it should have still been from Darkseid's perspective, get into the same moment, but
to see him come through. But it still kind of is. It's not fully Boosters because it looks, everything's kind of third person, right? Like we're looking at Booster from across the way versus over his shoulder.
I mean, I guess, but it's not like we weren't looking at Booster. I don't know. It felt like it could have been more like distinct before we go to that same page at the end. But it's a minor quibble. I'm not going to. So
I want to talk about the Legion real quick. So if you're gonna add something else, because this might be a slight tangent.
Oh, right, okay, just in general, you want to talk about the Legion. I was just going to mention the art here. Obviously, the first story, which is Sempere, is excellent. Sempere's also been killing it on Wonder Woman, and seeing that applied to the entire Justice League, it made it feel like big and epic. I think having a very different artist for the Darkseid story makes a lot of sense as well, because it is coming from this much darker place. It's building a much different tone. And I generally liked it. I didn't like it as much as the Sempere stuff. I think I like the way it does some of the like, see when we get to like Darkseid and he's got like flames coming out of him and stuff towards the end. I think that stuff looks great. When it's doing like more Darkseid as a dark god in space and there's like apocalyptic planets, great. I think when we're seeing characters with like human faces, I'm less into it.
That Superman where it says where the but then there's Superman who's, if there's a being that embodies that hope, that energy, it's him. That Superman's rough.
So Superman's face there is pretty nasty.
I do like the Wes Craig stuff is a fair bit moodier too. Like it's got the heavier lines, heavier inks, and
it's the sort of thing where no, I like this artist better, admittedly, but it feels like you could have had Mike Perkins do this story.
For sure.
Or even Montos would have been another pick that would have filled the same kind of role. But that said, though, it still works. Obviously, it makes sense that it's darker, it's moodier, and all that. But anyway. All right, Matt, what do you want to say about the Legion?
So the Legion, one of the big stories that came out in the 80s was the Great Darkness Saga, and it was this whole big thing, and it was playing with the Legion and their future and where they stand. And at the end, the Great Darkness is revealed to be Darkseid, right?
Okay.
And that they end up defeating Darkseid, the Legion does, but he curses them. And this curse writers ended up doing anything. So the fact that we bring the Legion back around here as Darkseid's Legion, right, it's almost a take on this is the Great Darkness now, right? Is that the Elseworld or whatever is that, Darkseid 1 type vibe. But not only that, the Legion exists because of Superman, right? They were these teens that in the future that were inspired by the legend of Superman. So what's one thing that Darkseid can do to really drive home his thing is to corrupt the concept of the Legion, and now that they exist solely for him.
No, that's a good point. Legion's inspired by Superman, and that makes sense that Darkseid's world would have his take on that.
Right. So I do like that it's seemingly, they're the ones too that Booster would have been familiar with, because he is from the, even further in the future than they are, because he did steal the time bubble, right? So, him running into the Legion here, I think was another smart piece.
It is interesting though. Booster saying he knows where he is. That implies that in the future, like this did happen, and like it was in the museum. Hey, remember the whole two worlds thing where like Darkseid ruled another Earth? Blah blah blah.
Yeah. That's the other piece of it as well. So yeah, I just wanted to point out the Great Darkness Saga, and this seemingly fits into that idea of Darkseid winning, and this is what it would be like. But unlike when he fought the Legion, he actually succeeded here.
Yeah. All right. What you rating DC All In Special?
I'm gonna give this a straight 8.
Honestly, I was kind of tempted to go with a 9. I think I'm going to knock it down to an 8.5, just because the art in the Darkseid story, well, at times I think it's really appropriate and looks great. There's also stuff that doesn't look that great face-wise and whatnot. So, but no, as far as like kicking off this next era of DC, I like the stuff they've set up, and it's definitely made it interesting to check out these Absolute books, which I think the first one's next week. So. It's not long before we get to start digging into things and seeing how it all pans out. So, all right, there you go. Batman 153, legacy number 918, Chip Zdarsky writing with Jorge Jimenez on the art. So, start of a new arc. Obviously, we wrapped up all the stuff that Zdarsky had been doing, thankfully, just before this last little event. And as a result, because we've been doing the tie-ins, it's kind of a fresh start with this issue. With very little really connecting to the previous stuff. I mean, other than the fact that we did have that ending before where he bought the new house and said he was going to try and fix up Gotham with new housing and stuff, which does get referenced here. They do a whole thing at the start where a parents and a kid go into an alleyway and they're like trying to like have a shortcut, and like someone comes up to them. It's like, oh, is this going to be another like Wayne style moment? And the twist is that this guy just helps them find where they're going and gives them advice. And Batman actually watches this from the rooftop. It's like he was getting ready to swoop in and do his thing. And it's like, oh no, he was just being a decent person. Okay.
Yeah, I just love him going, okay. That's weird. A dark alley and no one got hurt? Also, did I look if the mom was wearing pearls? You bet your ass I looked. There's no more pearls.
No, she's got like a big
it's like a
big collar. You can't really see.
Yeah, like a big puffy jacket that zips all the way up to your neck. Yeah.
So she could be wearing pearls under there for all you know.
She could be, but I don't think they were in any danger of getting snatched by this man that just wanted to help.
So yeah, this sets up a bunch of stuff. It sets up with the Edward Nigma because of what happened to him in Blackgate. He's been released, and he decided to become a tech bro and like start a company, and he's already like successful.
Yeah, he created a cryptocurrency, which of course, if any of the Bat villains are gonna have a cryptocurrency, it's Riddler.
Yeah, called Questium.
Yeah. So I thought that was funny, but yeah, him becoming a part of this bubble stuff makes sense as well. And making the money and trying to do stuff. But a lot, man. Again, we thought Arkham was a revolving door, but it seems like Blackgate recently has become a revolving door as well.
Well, I guess it's fallout from Absolute Power and all that. So fair enough, I guess. Mayor Nakano's obviously back here as well. Obviously, he's not going to be around much longer by the end of this issue, but they do bring him back in here, kind of remind us that he, has the wife and kid that he cares about, although it sounds like he's been cheating on his wife, because someone from the Court of Owls has been forcing him to make certain decisions, and he's starting to retaliate, and that's probably why he gets killed at the end of the issue. But his marriage is strained. The wife wants to leave him because he's never coming home. It's causing a lot of effort.
She's tired of being the mayor's wife. Yep. Right? She's like, I miss you. Your kid misses you. You're always here. And it does seem like it's not just because it seems like he's been working with the Court of Owls, and now it's not just he was the mayor and mayors are busy. There's been more going on, and he's trying to shield them from. At least that's how I took it.
Yeah, Batman's meeting Riddler and being, hey, you better be on the straight and narrow, or I'll be watching. I'll be in the shadows, making sure you're not doing anything wrong. He also mentions that because Riddler's selling security like software to people, he's like, I've been poring over that code to make sure you're not putting anything dodgy in there. You better believe it. So yeah, we see some like just like the idea that people are protesting because Wayne's been putting money into like building up this new housing, affordable housing in certain areas. There's protesters calling him a communist because the houses are going to immigrants, and Wayne's just kind of like tanking it, but the other executives like are feeling less positive about it, and they want their profits to go up. Yeah. So it seems like Riddler's actually in cahoots with the current like CEO of Wayne Enterprises and try to get her to convince Wayne to merge or sell to his company. So I mean, I appreciated a lot of this. It set a lot of stuff up. I kind of like that he's building a whole new like set of things we're playing with. I definitely like this way more than any of the failsafe shit. I'll say that much.
I was reading this and I'm like, wait, do I like this? Is this good?
Well, I will say though, there was a moment where I laughed out loud, and not because something was good. So after this, when Wayne runs off, it's because he hears that there's been like a jewel robbery, and he's like chasing down these guys in a van, and like the guys in the van, they're like, oh, get on the run, we'll drive through the park, we'll get away from the cops. And then you see like in the foreground, it looks like Batman's just standing on the road, but then you turn for not quite a full page spread, but almost like 2/3 of a page. And we see what might be the dumbest looking person in a costume I have ever seen in my life, which I'm sure is the intent. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is them thinking they've come up with a blinder and they don't know what they're doing. But this looks like Captain America and Homelander, like, just absolutely, like, they had so much hard sex, as hard as they possibly could, and this is the produce that was sprayed all over the walls and turned into a costume.
This is Cody Rhodes' origin story. Right? Like, and he also has forearm knives, like Baraka from Mortal Kombat. Doesn't really match the Patriot vibe or whatever, but okay.
It's well, and he's got that problem as well, where now obviously some superheroes have cowls. Pardon me. Have cowls without ears like Batman, because the Flash gets away with it, right? It looks fine on the Flash, but for some reason there's a lot of heroes where they have the full cowl but without like bat ears. It's just like a flat dome that look a bit off. I'm looking at like, I always think Midnighter looks a bit weird without like having anything up there, and this guy's got the same problem where I look at that head and I'm getting like cheap superhero kind of vibes, which again, possibly the intention, but
could be the thing, because I feel like we're not supposed to take this guy seriously.
No,
right?
No.
Like, and that's going to be the threat.
I certainly hope not. Yeah.
Yeah. There's that. Superman didn't take him seriously, and this is just part of a show, because whatever.
But I blurted out laughing, and I was just like, okay, what are we doing now? Come on, what is this?
Bro, I was partially relieved it wasn't Ghostmaker, right? Because when I turn the page and I see the deep cape, and I was like, well, that's clearly not Batman. And it was a red, white, and blue Ghostmaker. And I was like, oh no.
Ghostmakers went patriotic.
Yeah.
Right? January 6th hit, he thought to himself, I need to go and do something a bit different.
He's Liberty Maker.
Yeah, because there's a line in here about how it's when Batman's talking to Leslie Tompkins when he's getting patched up afterwards, where she mentions that anyone like decked out in the flag gets away with a lot than they otherwise would, and that's kind of maybe the part. So it sounds like this is like a plant from Vandal Savage, who's still commissioner for the record, and Nakano's not happy about it, especially since this guy. Did we even get a name for him?
Commander Star,
there you go. Yeah, so memorable. But Batman swoops in to like stop the truck, right? And when one of the bad guys is running away, Commander Star just pulls out a gun and shoots the guy in the leg, and Batman like grabs him and is like ready to beat the shit out of him. And that's when Savage walks in and says, "Oh, you're a hero, you just saved lives," blah 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 blah. And Nakano's like, "Hey, I'm not going to get on board with this. Like, we don't need another violent vigilante." And Savage's like, "You're quite right, we have to let one go. Arrest the Batman."
Kind of love Vandal Savage as the thorn in the side of Batman as police commissioner.
That was funny, I have to admit. Him saying, "Yeah, we have to let one go, arrest Batman," is really quite funny.
I was gonna say, I lost this one again, but it was about Commander Star and all of that type of stuff. Oh, with Nakano, didn't he? Correct me if I'm wrong here. Didn't he come in by like having an anti-cape stance in Gotham?
Yes,
and that's how he got. Yeah, that's how he got elected.
That was.
So
I want to say that was back in Tamaki's detective run.
Yeah.
We found out about that.
That was a while back. So to have this other guy come in and to kind of like, no, we need less of these guys here. I thought that was a good beat too.
Yeah. So the end of the issue, which kind of is, there's panels from like multiple things happening. Bruce getting spat on by a homeless man.
Yeah.
Edward Nigma going to his fancy like server's room, and clearly he's plotting something. But the big thing is that Nakano is killed. Like he's walking home, and he gets killed, along with the other big bombshell, which is honestly it's the warning sign now I have for this arc, because I was like, you know what, I'm kind of mostly into this. I like that they're setting up Nakano. I like that they're setting this Savage stuff as Commissioner is kind of funny now. It feels like we're doing a more grounded story. Oh, shock death of Nakano. Oh, that's a good cliffhanger to end your first issue of the arc. But then you have the executive lady from Wayne Enterprises show up to see Bruce and says, hey, Bruce, there's a claim filed against you for half of your shares of the company.
I was like, wait, what?
And then the final line of the book is, do you have a brother? And I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? Because there's a 9 times out of 10 chance I'm going to hate this, right?
Okay. How'd you feel about the first Court of Owls story?
I mean, I liked it at the time, but...
Do you remember Lincoln March?
I do remember Lincoln March. It's the first thing I thought of when they mentioned brother.
Okay, I thought so too. And that made me kind of excited, because I always liked that I felt like we didn't get a chance to touch on the Lincoln March stuff of that whole, is he or isn't he related to the Waynes, right? Was he just some guy? So the fact that it's been so long, right? And I don't think that's an actual, blood relative. I think this is the Court of Owls making a move, right?
Yeah, and obviously we have the guy from the Owls earlier on. There's a moment where Bruce sees an owl on a street light, and makes a little note in his head about there's old things in this city still at play, and it seems like we're getting a Court of Owls story mixed with a bit of Riddler, which is fine.
And then that also, when you look at Commander Star and he's got them big long knives on his arm, I was like, wait, is this just a retrofitted Talon costume? Like, are they part of this as well?
Yeah, okay.
Right?
I can see that. Maybe they're covertly moving people into the city to take over, and they're... Yeah.
Right? And they've got Vandal Savage now, so that's where Nakano, right? Because the representative from the court went to kind of warn Nakano that to do what he says. So now it seems like, well, maybe they bypassed Nakano and went to Vandal Savage, and now it's kind of like this puppet government in Gotham.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
especially now with Nakano dying as well,
this story does have potential. Like, I'm not writing it off, certainly, but I will admit, like, the phrase, do you have a brother at the end, gave me, like, oh god, like, what sort of weird flashbacks are we going to get? Like, sort of try to justify this. Like, I just... Sometimes, like, comic book storylines just have an idea that I don't like, even though there's a good chance that by the end it's going to turn out to not be true. And in this case, I suspect it will turn out to not really be his brother, because no one wants to actually give him a brother. But the fact, even going through the motions of entertaining the idea or exploring him thinking about the fact that he might have a brother sounds tiring to me. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes. But, I mean, this issue was definitely better than most of his run had been.
Yeah.
Certainly from his second arc all the way up to basically that one-shot issue that was quite good. But, we'll see.
Yeah, again, I'm reading this going like, I don't hate this. And I've conditioned myself to be like, ugh, I have to read Batman. And I'm sitting here reading it. I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm liking this. And it's not just because the court, as I am a sucker for a good Court of Owls story. That City of Madness was pretty good that Ward did. So, yeah.
All right. What are you giving Batman?
I'm going to give this a 7. Expectations are still a little bit, up in the air. But, again, I didn't hate it.
Yeah, I'll probably agree with the 7. I do think there's potential for me not to like where they're going with it, but I also see potential in it being a good Court of Owls story about them actually trying to take over the city. Admittedly, though, you know, we did just have stories in Detective about like a family taking over a city, so
Yeah.
I do worry that maybe some of that will feel a bit repetitive, especially since I feel like a lot of big Batman stories tend to be someone takes over the city.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Although I always feel with the court, they do things quietly, right? So I don't think we'll be shutting down the city, you know, in ways, and gentrifying things. I think that they just want to maintain their control. I always felt like, you know, on Long Halloween, it's the, you know, the mob against the freaks, and then the freaks end up having their own pushback and stuff. I always felt like the Court of Owls is this other, you know, third part of the Gotham history, to where, you know, they can push back against both, right? Because they're the aristocracy. So, yeah, I'm open to where this goes for sure.
Okay, cool. Birds of Prey 14, Legacy number 212. This is Kelly Thompson with Sami Basri on the art. So, start of a new arc, which is exciting, and very interesting start it is. So, the book starts with what's supposedly Cassandra Cain getting out of a fancy elevator in like a big penthouse kind of thing, and she's got hair slicked back, sunglasses on, she's wearing like a really fancy white waistcoat.
She's reminding me a lot of Selena.
Yeah, it's a very Catwoman look, yeah. And it says Cassandra Cain, sorta. And then we find out, and I really like this reveal actually once we got into it. You know, she goes in and talks to these big wigs who weren't sure like if they wanted to trust her, so they had like a guy attack her, and she beats up all their henchmen, and then says, "Clearly, you need more time to think about this. I'll reschedule it for noon." And she sounds like a corporate bigwig who's like, "My time's too important. I'll come back at noon. You better be ready." So what it turns out is when we cut to Babs and Dinah back at the clock tower, is that we're doing some old school Birds of Prey spy stuff, but it's Cass who's the undercover. She's the one who's actually going in and doing the mission. And Dinah's frustrated by that, but Babs points out that, hey, you made yourself famous by being in a rock band. We can't use you for the spy work anymore, which I thought was an interesting touch.
So having read the All In special, right?
Yes.
I'm like, oh, is this here because she can't control her new powers, right? Can't have her out there.
Doesn't seem like it.
No. And then she makes that, oh, you're the one that went out there to become a pop star. And I was like, oh, okay, I like this more.
Yeah,
she can't be discreet because she's Black Canary.
This is funnier, yeah. Plus, I think having that bleed into this Birds of Prey book, like her having powers for a while, would make it feel like it would be harder to like read this run on its own. So I'm glad that they're just kind of dodging around it. I like this idea. I also like that they said the cast would rotate a bit, and it has, but I do really appreciate that it feels like Cass and Barda are definitely permanent. It really, now that they're both in this one again, it feels like, okay, Babs, Dinah, Cass, and Barda are the core team, and then it's the others who are, rotating in or out.
And to that I say, let's go, because I have loved, we already liked Cass before, right? Now we're big fans on the show, but Barda, especially this version of Barda, has won my heart. And so but it's funny that you mentioned that, because I'm looking at the alternate covers as we're talking, and there's a Kelly Jones Halloween cover, and it has those four characters. It's Babs, Cass, Barda, and Dinah on there. So seems like that's what the vibe DC wants.
Yeah. Plus, given who Cass is, her having to role play as like this hot shot is actually quite funny, because like it feels like she probably would be quite, I don't know if nervous is the right word, but like it does feel like it's a bit out of her element, so forcing her to do this does actually feel quite entertaining, to just push her a little bit. So it turns out what the mission is, though, is that they believe that this company has kidnapped Amazons, right? 5 Amazons, and they're doing something, they're extracting DNA or something to do nefarious things with.
Because, they're a health and wellness company that's almost more like a cult. So you're getting kind of this hippy-dippy kind of vibe from the main CEO when Cass is talking to him. And then you find out that they're a wellness company and they're doing something with the Amazon. So, of course, Nubia's not excited about that. So she's in contact with the birds. I like that it's also tying back to the Amazons and that first story arc.
Well, that's what I was just going to say, is that this is actually kind of the birds try to make good for that and saying, hey, we'll help you out with this, we'll do this quietly and get you your Amazons back, and like, so, you know, I like that there's a clear kind of, like you said, connection back to that first story where there was a bit of a rift that formed, and this can possibly mend it. And given that, you know, the Amazons are what they are, and that Birds of Prey is kind of the prominent female team in DC Comics, I do kind of like there being a little bit of interplay between them, and like there being kind of a relationship there that you know, they're actually building up by having them fall out and now sort of try and repair potentially. Also, Barda's training with two Amazons who are at the Birds headquarters, and they're basically saying, hey, should we be scared of like sparring with her because she took down Wonder Woman, or she almost did anyway. And they go in and basically get cocky, start punching Barda, and Barda just looks like she's enjoying herself. She's just throwing them around and taking the punches. She's impressed that they get her helmet off, but it's not looking too hot. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a fun sequence. It's more of like Barda's like comedy gold, to be honest.
Yes. So, do you recognize the redheaded with tattoos? Amazon?
Yeah, is that Artemis?
No, that's Grace from way back in the day, in the Outsiders days. She was part of Nightwing's Outsiders team.
Oh,
and she, you know, back then she was half Ben and McDowell, right? And she, you know, went around from home to home. So her main thing was she was always looking for a family, and she found acceptance from the Outsiders. And yeah, so to see her pop back up here, knowing what Kelly Thompson's capable of taking these characters, and you know, I'm very excited because to see how she played out here against Barda and the quips and all this other stuff, I'm like, okay, it's been a while since we've seen Grace in the pages of DC, so
yeah, I don't think I remember her from anything, honestly. I just saw a redhead and made some assumptions.
Any doubt that I would recognize who the redheaded character was? None, right?
Yeah, Matt's a pervert. Everyone knows this.
Sorry, I have a type.
Which, notably, your wife is not part of that type. How does she feel about this type?
Listen. I also don't look like Chris Evans. It's fine.
That's the trade-off. I don't look like Chris Evans, and you're not a redhead. All right, we just make do with it.
Yeah, we're good.
Oh dear. So yeah, bit of comedy, all fun. Breaks up the middle a bit. And then, the end of the book is like, okay, it's the meeting again. Cass goes back up. She talks to these guys, and they take her down a secret entrance, an elevator, to a vault where we do indeed have 5 Amazons all hooked up. One's in a tank, and 4 are sort of on tables with like VR headsets on and stuff. And that's the cliffhanger. It says Bird Undercover Part 1. And that's cool. I'm into this. I'm into Cass being sort of out of her comfort zone and having to play a role that she's not used to. It's kind of fun.
And the fact that Thompson's gone out of her way to show the relationship between Barda and Cass, so you know that if Smallbat gets into trouble, she's not going to hesitate to go save her friend.
Absolutely. I even like that moment where she's like, I should have went on this mission instead. And they're like, Barda, Spyworks about blending in. You can't do that. Only for her to be like, well, Spyworks stupid then.
Yeah. Again, I love this version of Barda. But yeah, so just knowing that too, that relationship is still there, you know, and yeah, if that's what it gets down to. But yeah, what is this company doing? Because they seem like they're a healthcare line. So what exactly are they extracting from these Amazons and selling?
I don't think it's for the healthcare stuff. I've got a feeling that they're doing something
like genetic altering.
Yeah, or they're selling DNA to like military or something. I feel like it's something beyond what their front companies do. I don't think it's just like, oh, this is. I mean, maybe it will just be amazing. Like, oh, we've got this face cream that's like perfect because it comes from Amazon skin or something. I don't know.
No, I don't think that. I just mean like what is the ultimate? Because they are, like you said, they're hooked up to VR headsets and whatnot. And there's one that looks like a Bacta tank from Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they look. I say VR headsets because they look like that, but they could be doing something else. It may not be showing them something. It might be I don't know, scanning their eyes or something. I mean, for all we know,
keeping them calm or whatever. Like but yeah. And this group too, pretty what's the word? Like you have the hippy dippy main guy who looks like a yoga master, and then his like security and whatnot. Like they both stand out really well, right? They don't seem like disposable villains. So yeah, looking forward to see where this goes. And Basri's art, all of that, the fight sequence with Barda is handled very well. Like the breakdowns, the layouts, all of that makes for a real nice change of pace from the more spy stuff. So yeah. All around great.
Yeah, I don't really have any complaints, to be honest. It was a fun read. It's always kind of comforting hearing Kelly Thompson write these characters and their chemistry, the banter between them, the jokes. The setup of this premise is really fun, especially since, you know, we did so much with, like, you know, the demon stuff on Themyscira in the first arc, and then the sort of the not dimension, but the, you know, the weird world
pocket universe. Yeah.
that we were in. I kind of like that this one doesn't have any like overly supernatural elements. It's just more of a straight, you know, spy story. I think a more grounded arc is exactly what I wanted from the next one. So I'm pleased that's what they're doing. So cool. What are you giving Shazam? It's not Shazam. That's next. Birds of Prey 14.
I'm gonna give it an 8.5.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Excellent. Shazam 16. Josie Campbell writing with Dan McDaid on the art. So Freddy is in dick mode and likes to remind.
Not Grayson. All right, we're talking.
No, just a dick.
Yes.
not Dick Grayson Esquire. No.
Yes.
Yeah, this was a really funny issue. I was laughing pretty consistently at this. It does some status quo stuff, you know, establishes that, yeah, Mary and the Captain have both joined the Justice League, so it does sort of loosely reference what's going on with All In and all that. But we also see that there's another superhero on the streets, because Billy comes in thinking, oh, I'm going to be on the news. The Captain saved a bunch of stuff. And he sits down to watch the news, and it's the Commander, which is what Freddy's calling himself. Because they're like, hey, wait, you're the older brother of the Captain? Does that make you Captain Senior? I'm like, well, no, because that would be his father, you idiot. He's like, no, I'm the Commander. It outranks Captain, don't you know? And I'm like, oh, this is so funny.
I'm just saying the Shazam naming conventions are only rivaled by Lucha Libres, right? Where you'll have, like, you know, Rey Mysterio Jr., but also Rey Mysterio 2. And they're different because of the lineage. And here, you know, we have, you know, the Captain Senior or the Commander and the Captain and all this other stuff. It's very funny.
Yeah, just entertaining. Billy getting pissed about it. Also, you hear the parents argue. Well, not arguing, but just being worried.
They're concerned
about their financial status, and basically paying this lawyer to deal with all the adoption stuff is racking up the costs. But yeah, Mary comes in and is like, she's looking at her phone, and she's like, wait, why did Freddy name himself the Commander in the family text chain? And she's clearly not seen the news yet, so hearing that out of context from her was really funny, I thought, as well. But yeah, so Billy wants to like deal with stuff. And
he wants to ask the new neighbor out on a date who Freddy's already shown interest in.
Oh no, right? not yet. He wants to deal with the Freddy stuff first, and everyone's like, no, we're studying for tests. It's not until Darla comes in through the bunny portal. Who, by the way, Darla is wearing like much like Dudley, like a made up Shazam outfit.
Yep, a makeshift.
But she's like, yes, I've been keeping eyes on the target. Asset Alpha is on their own. You're clear to engage, and then it reveals what she's talking about, and it's the girl next door. the Billy wants to ask out. And there's a really funny bit here actually, where she's waiting next to the car where her dad is, and Billy's round the corner. He's like, okay, I'm going to go talk to her, and he's with Darla and Mary, and he's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask her if she's from Tennessee, and then I'm going to say, because you're the only 10 I see. And both of them are like, no, don't. And then Billy's like, okay, I'll ask a grown up. And he says Shazam. And then the next panel's the Captain going, he said what? Absolutely not. Don't tell him that. And then he transforms back into Billy, and Billy pulls out this, I guess, cologne.
But it's like a body spray. Looking, like it's like Axe or any of those, you know, that you know, teen boys bathe in.
It's deodorant, is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Okay.
again, it's a cologne, body spray, whatever. Like, along those lines.
And so he's like, I'm going to use this, and then he Shazam's again, and the captain's like, if you ever see Billy pick this can up, slam it out of his hands immediately.
Yeah.
Shazam! And so it was just this quick switching between Billy and the captain just like disapproving of everything Billy's about to do. It was really funny.
It reminded me of when Dwight shuns Jim and then has to talk to him about something serious at work, so he'll unshun and shunned, unshunned, and it was like Shazam, unshazam. And it was a good laugh.
It was good, but of course, as Billy walks up to her, in pops Freddy's head, and of course, Freddy's like, "Hey, little bro, my younger brother." He keeps phrasing it that way, and it's clear that Freddy's trying to make a move already, and Billy's like, "Oh, is this your new hobby since the van died?" And it turns out that Bo, who's the girl, the next door neighbor, is like, oh, like, you know, I've been following this app that follows all these, like, you know, supervillain things and stuff in the area. Look, there's a giant robot apparently over here, and you see love hearts around her head. This is clearly something she's passionate about. It's like, you guys want to come? And like Billy's like staring wide-eyed. Freddy's standing there too, and it's actually Darla who jumps in and says, "Heck yeah, we are, Mary, come on, we're all going on a road trip." So it ended up being more of a family trip, and not just Billy and the girl he likes. But also this girl's dad's here, and he loves puns, so there's a couple of bad puns.
He's very like Freddy-esque, right? Yeah, he loves to talk. He loves these dad jokes, and she kind of warns them.
Yeah, classic Freddy though, not this current dick Freddy.
No, classic. Yeah, the one from before he finds that, you know, greenish, you know, nasty lightning bolt. Yes.
So yeah, they thought a lot. You know, they drive up and this robot's there. The dad didn't know that's what they were driving to. He thought he was taking them to a concert. So she runs out. They're all like, sort of like, oh, what's going on here? I actually what I liked about this here is that Darla is kept involved as effectively their oracle, because, you know, they hand her like a phone or whatever and say, all right, keep us informed of like where things are and keep a safe distance. I kind of like them getting Darla involved, you know, in this capacity while she doesn't have powers. That's kind of fun.
Well, and they're getting her away to keep her safe as well.
Of course, yeah. They can't have her there in the fighting, but I like the idea that Darla still wants to be involved, so they're giving her something she can do, you know, even now. So we get a full page spread where they all say Shazam, all three of them, which is a cool page. It's a cool page. I like the colors popping. I will say that I think McDaid's art is... it's okay. Like, I don't love it.
I'm not a big fan of it. It's very cartoony, and not in the sense that it really works with Shazam, when Shazam can be cartoony.
Yeah, it's got a... yeah, it just doesn't quite click in the same way that I think some of the previous artists that have clicked for me on Shazam.
And I agree, because that was my biggest takeaway from this is like some of the proportions are really off. Like again, just on the Shazam page, where sometimes the green lightning bolt on Freddy's takes up a bigger chunk, right? And so it's just kind of, his proportions are all over the place. But I think that's just McDaid's style, because if I look through, a lot of them look like that. But other than that, I think that the art's fine.
It's
you know,
yeah, it's fine. I'm just not in love with it. No. You know, it's okay. It's not like an off-putting or anything, but
no,
certainly not art I'm going to be raving about later either. So they're fighting the robot. It's all going on, and we're sort of like teasing like whoever's controlling the robot is like hooked up to all these like green tubes and stuff, which is interesting on its own right, but. Ultimately, we hear this narration coming from someone. We find out by the end who it is, but they're basically saying, "Oh, you know, Freddy's fallen into this trap of like, everyone dreams of being a hero, so he gets to be one, and he's thinking to himself that he's better than everyone. And I'm going to play in those desires and those insecurities that are fueling his entire thing right now." And as this is going on, the fighting's continuing. Freddy's fighting the robot. Billy's protecting, and I say Billy, I mean the captain, is protecting. People from like one of those cell phone heart guys that were introduced in Josie Campbell's Miss Marvel run, and then Miss Marvel's protecting civilians. So they're all getting stuff to do. It's all kind of a nice widespread thing. And this guy in long hair comes up and offers a society like membership card to Freddy, which Freddy seems to be quite taken with, and is like, you know, seems to be quite happy to take it. And then the reveal, and we see It's obviously Savannah, but like I don't remember the daughter's name.
No, just it's Lady Savannah.
Lady
That's just
Savannah.
where
Yeah. So she's with the guy in the green who I didn't quite get who that was supposed to be necessarily. But
no.
The guy with the long hair in the business suit who gave Freddy the card comes in, and the reveal at the end is that inside that man is Mr. Mind. So,
And that reveal of him coming through the eye
in silhouette, yeah, you get that last panel in silhouette, and then the full page
Yeah.
spread in the last page is good. Yeah.
By the way, her name's Georgia Savannah.
Georgia. That doesn't even
Yes.
sound familiar.
No. So I was like, it's got to sound like, and I'm like, wait, Savannah's name is Thaddeus. So it's not anywhere close. So yeah, I had to do some digging.
Well. Now, obviously, yeah, big Captain Marvel villain here. Happy for a Mr. Mind story. I especially like the part of like the Freddy thing started separately, where it's just because he picked up that artifact. I mean, maybe they'll say that he was already kind of in his ear, kind of like motivating him. But the idea that Mr. Mind's going to sort of use this and try and corrupt Freddy even more using these insecurities is, I think that's a fun potential to go here.
I mean, that's kind of what Mr. Mind's always kind of done, right? He speaks to those, kind of plays off. He's, don't forget that Freddy found that thing in the same chamber where the 7 deadly sins are.
Yep.
Right? So it seems like he speaks to the worst parts of people. So having him pop out here, and then him even calling him, not wanting to be called Master, just Mr. I thought that was a nice little character punch.
And Lady Savannah's involvement when we see her with the bad guys here at the end, obviously is like a little payoff to the mobile phone thing with the chest, because that was her whole scheme back in that Mary Marvel mini. So that already had like a little payoff in that sense, which is cool. So yeah, curious to see where they go with this. But I mean, I was loving all the interactions with Freddy and Billy. I was loving the comedy beats with Billy wanting to ask the girl on the date. It was a super entertaining read and pretty much every front for me.
So sometimes you forget that they're supposed to be younger teens.
Yes.
Right? And that Mary's older, and then an issue like this comes out where they're acting like younger teens, and I think that Josie Campbell really gets that dynamic, and so it's nice to be reminded every once in a while that these still are kids.
For sure. But no, I had a good fun time. What are you rating Shazam, Matt?
I'm gonna give this a 7.5.
I think I'm still happy to give it the 8, even though I didn't love the art. I still think I was so entertained, and it's like it's actually kind of weird we get this in Birds of Prey in the same week, because I think they both give me a similar kind of comfort feeling of like, oh, this is just always a pleasant time to spend with these characters in a way that other books don't quite hit. So yeah, cool. There you go. That's Shazam. Justice Society of America, issue 12. Geoff Johns writing with Todd Nauck on the art. So this should be a quick conversation because it was a very quick read. We were wondering.
This was barely an issue.
Yeah, we were wondering what this was going to be, given that the story kind of wrapped up already. And it turns out this final issue of this series, the last Johns issue before we get the new GSA book, is actually just kind of a celebration anniversary issue of Stargirl, because it's 25 years since her debut, which I did not realize. That was like a nice thing to read at the end. But it's basically just a lot of nice big art from Todd Nauck of like Stargirl talking about it. Turns out she's making a speech at graduation, so she's growing up a little bit, and it's almost like it feels like Johns is kind of saying goodbye to the character in some ways. With this, but it's mostly just like action and like different scenes of her in a stripe fighting various villains that you might recognize. It recaps some of her history, some of like how she met Pat, and like now she's calling Pat Dad at graduation and all that. And that's kind of it. I mean, there's a point in the middle of this issue where there's like 4 2-page spreads in a row of just like big fight scenes.
Brother, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5. There's 5 of them in the double page spreads, and look, Todd Nauck kills it with the art. Every one of these characters is very well drawn, and however, when I am looking at what could be Geoff Johns' last DC issue for a very long time, and it feels like mostly filler, it makes me a little bit sad.
I think it's just kind of weird that it's the last issue. See, if this had been like in the middle of a run, I think we'd just be like, oh, that was a nice little homage, even though it wasn't much of an issue. But it's effectively, it would be like a fill-in issue to give the artist a month off, kind of thing. As the last issue, it's kind of weird, but I mean, there's some nice moments. Todd Nauck's art's pretty good.
And if you care about Courtney at all, right, the character, this feels nice. It does feel like
it feels nice.
A graduation, and you see what she's been through, and just the fact that she's calling Pat dad, because I went back and right before the Stargirl mini came out, what was that called, with the Lost Children? I went and I reread those early Stargirl, and so to have that so fresh and how much kind of a brat she was just because of her own history and relationship with her father. So just to see that Johns gets to put that final little dot on things, it feels nice that this character has grown from that.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird because it reads so quick and there's not too much to it. I think this being, either a fill-in issue in the middle or part of a Stargirl book, it would have fit a little bit better. This feels more like a one-shot that they just called issue 12 of this series because they figured it'd sell more copies that way instead of just having Stargirl, anniversary special issue 1. But, it does say at the end as well, forever dedicated to Courtney Elizabeth Johns, so re-saying that dedication is also kind of a nice thing, which... Yeah, it feels like a goodbye with good art, but it really is. Like, it's one of those things that you get sometimes in comics where they spend most of the comic just like doing like big 2-page spreads that are recapping an old fight that you've already seen, and that's what a lot of this issue is. And yeah, it looks good, but I really have not much else to say about it.
No, and then there is a thread of her speech about Pat teaching her that You gotta, life's gonna give you curveballs, and you gotta do your best to knock them out. So the ending thing is bring on the curveballs, and that also kind of felt like if you're reading it through that frame too of Johns in his time at DC, right? That this is what he had done, and now it's on to the next thing as well after spending so much time there. Again, it's bittersweet.
Yeah. All right, I guess it's time to... What are you rating this issue?
I feel like I can't give it more than a 7. The art's great, but it's not much of anything, so a 7.
Yeah, I'm almost tempted to be harsher, but I'll probably say 7 as well.
I thought about going harsher as well, but it made me feel nice. Just
it does. If you like Stargirl and you like the art, you're probably going to feel warm and fuzzy enough. But at the same time, if you bought this and feel like you got almost nothing out of it because there's not much of a story, I honestly couldn't really fault you for feeling that way either. So, just kind of a weird, like, tacked on last issue. I do think just calling the Stargirl special issue 1 or something would have been a smart choice.
Stargirl graduation day special,
Yeah. That would have just been a better thing overall, but oh well. All right, Poison Ivy issue 26. Williamson writing with Marcio Takara on the art. Take it away, Matt.
So we are in the what feels like the second phase of G. Willow Wilson and Marcio Takara's Poison Ivy saga, and so here we immediately jump into what these new stories are going to be. It starts with Janet from HR and Harley, kind of living together within Gotham, and while Pam goes and does her Poison Ivy stuff, Janet's trying to get back into her regular life, and she's out grocery shopping at, what effectively is a Whole Foods. It's this overpriced grocery store that claims, to be healthier and more organic. We're getting some dialogue from her where she eats there or Pam sends her because it's a bit more ethical because of the stuff that they sell. And it kind of ends with this really big speech bubble of kind of the logical fallacies that are in trying to be a consumer in America. Of you got to eat this, but you can't eat that. And no, almonds are healthy, but they're bad. Growing them puts too much of a strain on the environment. So we have to find other sources. And as she's kind of having this inner struggle, some dude comes blowing past her out of the store with a spray paint. And on the outside of the store, it says the Green Knight lives. And she turns around, sees him running, and the store blows up. To where we get the news with Pam and nursing Janet back up, and the news is talking about there's this new eco-terrorist group called the Green Knight, or who are they called? Yeah, the Order of the Green Knight, and they are claiming responsibility for this, and that there will be more. So Pam's like, well, I have to look into this, but I also need to know what's going on with that little town that's popping up in Slaughter Swamp. So she heads out and she talks about how if forests are like the lungs of the earth, these wetlands and swamps are like the liver, and that they detoxify things. And so as soon as she steps foot in the water, right, it's some really gorgeous art from Takara. She's heading there at sunset. She's riding her bike. As soon as she steps foot into the water, she gets enveloped by her poison ivy. Kind of, I don't want to call it a costume, but it's the green, it's the flowers and the grasses. And she starts heading inland into the swamp to find out what's up with the city. And when she gets there, she notices like there's some silt on the ground and algae, which would suggest that this town's been submerged. But if it's come up, why? Does it have to do with Woodrue? Is it other things that's going on? It's called Marshview, and it looks like it's straight from the 50s, right? A lot of the designs and stuff. So like there's an old style barber shop and a city hall with the church right next to it in the center of town. And as Pam's going through, she sees like graffiti on the town that says, I see them too. And right after she sees that, she steps through this board, falls through, and then tries to call Janet. And Janet's on the phone with Croc because while Pam's out and about, Janet's trying to go to yoga. And as she steps out of their apartment, there's like a shrine to Pam at their door. There's candles, there's pictures of her, there's plants. It even looks like a rendering of a green person. I don't know if it's supposed to be Croc or Swamp Thing or whatever. So Janet gets a little bit weirded out by that. So she calls Croc because she's like, I have more friends than Pam. And Croc gets happy by that. He's like, oh, you want me to come over? Like, you actually like being around me? So he's on his way over. Pam finally gets through to Janet and is like, look, this is weird because, I study science. None of this is really making sense. And Janet brings up like the Green Knight, that she wonders if they have anything to do with this. And this is where Pam's like, I study science, not literature. So, help me out here. And she brings up that the Green Knight was this character from Arthurian legend who Sir Gawain had fought. And he, the Green Knight represented nature. And he was kind of this figure that nature was fighting back against whatever the knights were doing. And as Pam looks up into this town, suddenly there's two eyes up on the, painted onto this wall that weren't there before. And Pam mentions that, feels like she's being watched. And as Janet gets back into the house waiting, because she's going to wait for Croc to show up, there's on the newscast, the Green Knight is, the Order of the Green Knight is claiming that Pam is their leader. And that, the authorities are now looking for Pamela Isley. And that's where the issue ends. So picking up on a lot of the seeds, for lack of a better word, that Wilson has seeded out there from the last issue. And, and just Takara's art here is fantastic. The explosion at the beginning, a lot of harsh colors being used, because it's an explosion, which is balanced out by a lot of the softer colors in the sunset. So like there's oranges and yellows and stuff, right? In the explosion, but those are offset by the sunset with the softer versions of those. So there seems to be a balance of nature that's been going on. And just again, Takara's Pam is one of my favorite versions of her. She just the red and the green are balanced so well, and there's almost a watercolorness to this. So yeah, so it looking like there's a version of Pam running out there that's running this organization, and that's why they're leaving stuff at her apartment with Janet. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this issue. I'm gonna give it an 8.5.
Oh, all right. Going strong then. Plastic Man No More, issue 2, Christopher Cantwell and Jacob Edgar. Or how Plastic Man accidentally killed all the metal men.
Accidentally in quotes, because that wasn't supposed to happen. That's kind of, isn't that E.L. O'Brien's entire thing? Is that wasn't supposed to happen?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't supposed to happen. It was, he wanted to just magnetize them so he could, steal uranium, right? That's what he wants.
Yes, and he learned that not all metals are magnetic.
Yes. In fact, he learned that most of them aren't, because only one of them actually gets affected by it. Which, to be fair, I didn't know that. I assumed gold would be magnetic. I didn't realize gold wasn't.
No, I don't think it is. Maybe in large enough quantities, but any gold that I've ever had is distinctly not magnetic.
Oh, that's fair. I mean, I don't know if I've ever had gold lying around to test it, but
you've never had a gold necklace or chain or anything like that?
I've never been a jewelry guy, no.
Yeah. Well, my aunt had given me, I was really into the Tasmanian Devil growing up.
All right.
So I had gotten a necklace that she had got me with a Chaz charm, and I wore that very proudly. So, but yes.
No, don't know. I wasn't surprised at some metals, because I don't imagine lead being magnetic, because lead's very different to, whatever. But I for some reason I assume gold would be. I guess it's just because it looks shiny enough. If any sort of shiny metal I expect to be magnetic. Obviously that's not true. Luckily I'm not the one doing engineering or
metallurgy.
Chemistry. Yeah. Metallurgy. I'm sure that's the word, but
metallurgy. Yeah.
So yeah, obviously last issue, Plastic Man finds out he's dying, but then ultimately he's worried that it's going to happen to his son, and that's what he's concerned about. So we can root for him. That's cool. He finds out that the one way that might stabilize him and therefore also save his son is to be at the center of a massive nuclear blast. That is his goal this issue. He is trying to steal uranium of the metal men because he wants to use them to create a huge nuclear blast. However, he was already kidnapped by Mr. No Face, which is actually honestly almost every line with Mr. No Face was actually making me laugh. This book is actually very funny at times. So all very good. All poorly thought out. None of it goes to plan as per usual. I love the more cartoony art you get and simplistic art when he's talking to the Justice League, because it's kind of how they see him as just a cartoon. Is a really nice touch. That works really well.
Which is then offset like when he sneezes. Yeah. And it becomes this like grotesque, almost body horror kind of art.
And but the art looks more like the rest of the book for like one page as he sneezes. And you're right, he's extra grotesque, especially. But then you go back to the simple art, but the snot, if you will, is still all over the table. And they're just having a good chuckle about it. So
he's dying and they're laughing. Like, it's hard to be Plastic Man.
Yeah, Bobo says, hey, do you need help? And Plastic Man declines it, but makes it clear that he's still there. There's also a little subplot with Plastic Man's son actually telling the mother, Plastic Man's old wife, that he is dying. News which she kind of rejects listening to be honest. She just kind of goes back to work and can't deal with it. But interesting that we're setting up her reaction to it to see how his family get involved next issue, the last one. But the doctor lady is not really willing to help with a nuclear blast to try and fix him. However, as we kind of predicted in the first issue, there was a tease of her losing a kid that might ultimately be why she sympathizes with him enough to actually go along with it. And sure enough, it is. When Plastic Man talks about this about saving his kid, and he's not sure if she can relate to that, she does admit, I had a daughter and she was on life support, and we ultimately chose to let her go, but I've always wondered, like, could I have done something more? So yeah, it does a good job of like saying, okay, this is why she's going to agree with this crazy plan. And it is worth mentioning, he does point out that he's found a location to set the bomb off that won't hurt anyone. He's got a desolate location in mind. So admittedly, his plans don't always go as scheduled, so it's still open for some problems.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, his son meets with Tim Drake, who talks to him about stuff, and it cuts away. So, for me though, the real star of this book though is the entire sequence where they go to get uranium back from Doctor or Mr. No Face, who's kidnapped him. And the joke of the issue, other than No Face just hating faces, because when we start this scene, they're playing cards, like him and Uranium are playing cards, and he's like, I hate faces, all faces, they're the worst, right? His hatred of faces, the way that characters in Parks and Rec hate the library, was cracking me up. But then the other thing that's sort of running here is that Uranium is an absolute dickhead, and all the metal men are like, yeah, we'll come and help save him, but like, he's the worst. Like, he's going to be a dick to you. Yeah. Yeah. So these two jokes just played off of each other during this whole rescue, because, you know, Plastic Man's got the metal men to come and help him. But he's going to betray them with the magnet once they're done. Like, all of this goes to shit. Basically, they turn on a big magnet. It doesn't quite work because they're like, wait, we don't magnetize. Like, you know, not all metal's magnetic. And he's like, huh? You could have Googled that, you know. It would have taken like 3 seconds to find that out. So he's like, hey, buddy, because he's got his old friend helping him up top who turned on the magnet. He's like, do something else. He's like, what? He's like, I don't know anything. And it doesn't even seem like he does anything. It's just that because he's made a big hole in the roof of this like factory that's got these big furnace type things, you know, big molten kind of smelters. The big walkway they're all standing on, the cable holding it up just kind of like comes undone and snaps, and all of the metal men fall into it's like the end of Terminator 2. It's basically that, where they all fall into that kind of molten metal.
There's no thumbs up though. There's just
no thumbs up. Plastic Man's got one arm, because keep in mind he's got his second arm in that bag because he's melting. And he uses that one arm to grab Uranium because he needs him, and lets them all fall to their death. And it's this horrific page of their faces kind of invisible in the molten metal, and it's again just kind of like Terminator 2, and they're like, shit, you killed them. And like Plastic Man's friends like, wait, they'll be back. You said they always come back from death, right? They're definitely coming back. They're not dead. No one will get hurt, right? And he kind of repeats, or you sort of hear the flashback of him saying, no one will get hurt, I promise. But the boxes of the words are melting as Plastic Man's face is melting in the intense heat. I love this ending. It felt like super dark for a book that was very funny up until this point. Like that the last panel of like Plastic Man's melting face coated in like the firelight of all this molten metal. Actually, it does look kind of like horror movie-esque and demonic. It looks like a demon or something. It's kind of nuts. What did you think of this book?
No, I liked it. I thought the comedy was really good. I have a soft spot for the Metalmen, and so seeing them on the same pages as Plastic Man, right? Because it's plastic metal, and you know, and they're usually the butt of jokes as well, right? So the fact that Cantwell chose to use them here, you know, like with Plastic Man, and then his carelessness, you know, being their undoing, right? It adds a bit more tragedy to all of this too. You know, so and yeah, just the whole idea that uranium, right? Because uranium is it's such a reactive metal, right? And it's such this element, and that's why they use it in the atomic bombs and whatnot, because it's so unstable. You know, him just looking at Plasma and going like, you killed them all. You know, it adds that little bit extra to it all too. So I did enjoy it.
Yeah, and obviously when they first get Uranium back, the first thing he does is like basically say how much he doesn't like them, which again just tying into how much of a dick he is. So yeah, I mean, I had a good time with this. It was constantly making me chuckle or giving me something funny, but it does have that tragic side to it, which really comes out in the ending. And The art's pretty good throughout, actually, but the stuff with the T2 stuff at the end is especially inspired looking. It's very good. I like the joke where before the betrayal, when they're all just sort of dealing with Mr. No Face, and Mr. No Face has a flamethrower, and he's threatening. He's like, "Hey, gold doesn't have, the melting point of gold's actually pretty low. I'm going to melt you." And then like one of the other metal men jumps in and says, "Yeah, but my melting point's much lower than his. Why weren't you threatening me with that?"
Yeah.
I got a chuckle out of that.
I also love when he just calls uranium a dickhead. Right? Because I kidnapped you so I could turn you to 400 pounds of pure U-235, dickhead. Because he's like, I didn't kidnap you to get therapy. Man, I just thought, just the timing for some of this stuff too. Like,
yeah, I don't know, Mr. No Face, I can't say I know this character, but he was making me laugh almost instantly. Just the idea that he's playing poker and he's audibly just going, "Oh, I hate faces. I hate face cards. There's faces on them."
And just the fact he has no face. So like, poker's a game where you read your opponent, right? And he's giving everything away.
Yeah, that's funny.
Right?
That's funny. Yeah. So good stuff. Yeah, I enjoyed the first issue of this. I like that it's given as a sympathetic character in Plastic Man. He's got a good reason for doing what he's doing, even though he's causing a bit of a path of destruction in his wake to try and like save his son from a potential, future melting like him. So yeah, no, a good time. Quite enjoying it. What are you rating Plastic Man No More?
I'm gonna give this a solid 8.
Yeah, I'm going to be boring and just say yeah, but I mean, we're syncing up. What can I say? So cool. Nice House by the Sea, issue 3. James Tynion the Fourth with Álvaro Martínez Bueno on the R. So this was exciting to come out of this issue because obviously we had the big cliffhanger at the end of issue 1 where 3 of the characters from the original house came to the new house, the House by the Sea. But issue 2 went back and showed their side of the story to how they got there. So we didn't really get the payoff to the cliffhanger. We just kind of built up to the same cliffhanger. So this was exciting because it was like, oh, we're actually going to see what came next. Like, where does this actually go? And thus, we get the story of Oliver. And also, we get the reveal of who the alien is that's built this house.
Who Max actually, not actually is, but who Max is in the scheme of the story.
Yes. Because when they bring up Max, it's like, wait, the characters know a Max? So, because Oliver crossed over from one group, from Walter's group, into Max's group, there is some overlap there. And it was interesting. And it turns out Nora actually dated Max once upon a time.
Yeah.
In high school or whatever. So, yeah, super interesting.
It clearly didn't go well. So, yeah.
No, it did not go well. Because this was pre-transition Nora, so it's probably bringing up a lot of weird feelings. Yeah, so we found out that Oliver was kind of this character that Walter was enamored by. I think the way one of the characters describes it, I think it's Sam who's narrating, the photographer character. He basically says that everyone felt like a character in Walter's story except Oliver. That was the one person where Walter felt like a character in theirs, and it was kind of like Walter was enamored by him as a result. And Oliver, of course, is the actor from House by the Sea, right? And I didn't know that as soon as I started talking about it. It wasn't until we saw him again as an adult I went, "Oh, that's him. Okay, right. Okay, this is all."
Well, because the younger version of him doesn't really strike a chord, as that's who it is.
Yeah. So yeah, all of this sort of like reveal of their backstory and that coming together, and there'd been this weird friendship and how Walter was obsessed with him, but Oliver was basically like, he knew about these houses. In fact, there's even indication in the flashbacks where he's talking to Sam. He's like, "Hey, did Walter tell you about stuff?" And he's like, "No, what are we talking about?" He's like, "Oh, never mind." And it's like, wait, does he already know about what the future is? That this is going to happen. There's going to be these houses. Because later on, when Oliver takes them to the 3 characters that come through to a bar, and they kind of compare notes a little bit, and it turns out the artist from the house by the lake is kind of was the new version of Oliver, effectively. Yeah. And obviously also knows Nora. Doesn't know her current name though. Right. Because when he knew her, it was what?
Norm.
Yeah, that was it. Yep. And like, so it was interesting seeing them compare notes, but like, it's clear that Oliver basically says, "Look, I wanted to get into one of these houses. I felt I deserved to be in them, but I wanted to earn it not because I happened to be friends with Walter, but because the rules were actually that these houses are meant to be like the best examples of all these different fields. It was meant to be like, an arc of the best, someone representing medicine, someone representing the arts, so on, so on, to be a capsule of what life on Earth was like. But Walter kind of like cheated because he wanted to save the people he liked rather than taking the best of all these different things. And that's kind of a problem. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah,
it's been very much that we see that Walter's kind of ruled by his emotions in this thing that's meant to be, scientific, and you're supposed to leave that behind. Walter can't seem to do that because that's why Reggie's there, right? He wasn't supposed to have that many people, but he couldn't let Reg die because he's attached to him. And just like here, he's breaking the rules, right? That they're not supposed to know about the houses. And they're like, oh, when Max finds out, it might be bad, and so it adds to these other subtle layers of Walter.
I don't think they're meant to know about the houses in advance like Oliver did, but I think everyone at this house seems to know about the ideas of the house. I mean, they seem to, it seems to be a lot more in the open in this house.
What I mean is like they're not supposed to know about the other houses, right? Because I don't know. Alter things.
I mean, do the others know about it? I thought they don't. You're right, because Oliver actually says, like they can't know there's other houses to compete with, especially if our closest neighbor through whatever portal it is or whatever is a house made up of exceptional people. That's what he says. These, like everyone here has got an ego because they're all exceptional in their fields or whatever. So they're probably like could there be like a house war effectively? Especially since what they do seem to know. In fact, not maybe they know there's other houses. Maybe they just don't know that the other house is full of unexceptionals. Maybe that's what he was getting at.
Sure,
but
maybe.
Regardless, this idea that there is going to be a winner, right? There is only going to be one house that gets to stay alive at some point, whenever the end of the game is, however, or the experiment, whatever you want to call it. There is an end point to this, and only one house gets to keep going. By the sounds of it, I do wonder, like, is there going to be infighting between the two houses, especially if they? Because I think the most interesting thing about this to me after their conversation is that Max comes to them and doesn't even seem that like fussed that it's happened. Like, does clearly say, "Hey, like the others can't know about this. It's good that you kept this to yourself, Oliver, and kept them secret." But we have to send them back. Max doesn't seem like upset by all that much. It mostly seems pretty easygoing, and even obviously knows some of the characters because it says, "Hey, Nora, remember me? We dated." Like so. That was an interesting dynamic because obviously I expect these houses are going to intermingle again. There's no way they're just going to keep separate now.
Well, and I'm wondering if that's all of the fire and stuff that we see at these beginning pages, right? Is that the outcome of the two houses meeting? Like they can't coexist.
Oh, maybe. Well,
and they, you know what I mean?
I mean, I was taking that as being in that sort of like far future. Remember when the first book started with like almost like a post-apocalyptic version of the writer? Yeah.
But I'm saying, what is that? What if that's the post-apocalypse now, right? Is that like they can't handle that there's houses, and this is the outcome of that, not the end of the world as we know it, right?
Yeah. It's also interesting is that they think they killed Walter, right? Now, I think Walter's the dog. I'm just going to. That seems to be the suggestion right now. Is that the dog that's in the house, and we see the character Sam with the dog during the storm. And once again, we see the dog's face through the whole Walter thing where it kind of does the weird shape and whatever. I don't know. It's just super, super interesting. But yeah, the characters from the first house are very shocked to hear, wait a minute, Walter didn't make this place too. There's another of his species here. There's more than one. And then they find out it's Max, which obviously freaks some of them out as well. Not all of them, because not all of them know Max. I think the other thing they bring up a lot in this issue is that Oliver kind of became this myth amongst like Walter's friend group because he was this guy that got away, so he's been kind of painted as like, oh, we don't talk about Oliver. In fact, one of the very first lines in the book is Sam saying, oh, no one brought him up, like no one talked about him, especially the people who knew Oliver back when we were close to Walter.
Yeah, so, definitely like hushed tones.
Yeah.
about him.
Yeah, I like that. Also, again, this idea that like the original house was more kind of kept in the dark than the other houses are. When they're going on their way back, there's this like weird like light portal thing in the sky, and they say, "Hey, why don't we have that?" And it's Reggie who says, "No, we kind of do. It's just hidden. Like the statues were kind of designed to like sort of replace, but they have the same purpose." It was the idea of like concealing what the place actually was, where the other houses don't seem to have that. And maybe the reason for that is because Walter did put a bunch of more normal people in the house as opposed to these exceptional people who like, of course we were important enough to be saved in the apocalypse. So it's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I wonder if that entitlement's going to be a big theme that we go with.
Because we feel like they're already like, yes, the Walter's house, they bicker and stuff, but it's more like friendly bickering.
Yeah,
like how you. Whereas there seems to be a undertone in that other house from that first issue.
There's power dynamics at play.
Yeah. That seem to be a lot stronger and could be their undoing, right? Like because they are so much. It's almost like a reality show where they feel like there has to be a winner versus Walter's house was like, no, we just got to survive. Like, we just need to live our lives. So yeah, definitely some things here, and especially with Sam because it seems like. The houses also seem to reflect the people that curated them, whereas it seems like Sam seems or Max seems more nonchalant, like, oh yeah, okay, and that's kind of how the other people in the house feel, even though there is that undertone.
Yeah, actually, one of the interesting things towards the end, before Max sends them back, and obviously because she's just like Walter, she can do that, is Max. Responds to a question. I think it's Reg who says, "Are you going to like take our memories of this and make us forget?" And she says, "Nah, I was always more discreet. I didn't like, because but the sounds of it, Walter was constantly telling his friends what he was going to do and then raising their minds. It seems like something he was doing all the time. And it sounds like Max never really did that, barring one. There's only one person I locked a few memories in, and is like, oh, there's no point in the secrets now, and turns and looks at Nora." And unlocks Nora's memories, and we just see like Nora's reaction, looking a bit shocked. So I'm kind of excited to see what Nora remembers. I mean, Reggie tries to ask, but like Nora's like, "No, don't ask me. We're not doing this now." So I'm actually really excited to see the fallout of whatever Nora's remembering from that time. Super interesting. But yeah, also interesting that despite all of the bravado. At the end, Oliver seems to break down in tears. And one of the other characters from the house, who I don't remember who it is from the first issue.
I think that was the more sinister one.
Well,
was the
that makes sense.
Older guy that de-aged himself.
But he's sort of watching in the shadows. Now, how much he saw is up for debate, but it seems like, he's getting ready to pounce because Oliver's more vulnerable. I think it's interesting, though, just from a character perspective, that Oliver was playing it so cool and cocky the entire time he was with those characters, but the second they left and he was on his own, he breaks down in tears. So I think the idea that he is really putting on a facade and trying to have this persona is maybe something we can explore going forward as well. So this was great. This went in super quick. It felt like all of the teething issues of trying to get back into this after some time away, as as we sort of reestablish what everything is, because there's so many characters, and there's still a lot of characters, don't get me wrong. It's a lot to take track of. There's no way I'll remember all these names next issue, but it's impressive just how much I can still follow what's going on and get into the story. And obviously Bueno's art is like that panel where it's like where Max is letting Nora remember, and it's like two like L pieces in Tetris, and the top piece is like the whiteout glasses of Max, and then the bottom piece is the reaction of Nora, like getting the memories back. That is a beautiful little just piece that right there.
I also like what Bueno's doing with the colors here, because it seems like there's a lot more experimentation going on. Like there's the scene where they're at the bar, and there's like this green tinge through the mirror, like it's the bar mirror.
Yeah.
Right. There's that. There's the red overlay towards the back when after Max shows up and like when he's breaking down, when Oliver's breaking down. So yeah, it seems like there's a lot more flair going on here too.
Actually, another thought in the thing I just mentioned before, the the reaction bit where it's the two pieces fitting together.
Yeah.
It's literally like a jigsaw piece has been put back into place. Like the pieces are fitting together again for the first time. So yeah, even just like thinking about it more, there's some really good nuance to like the choice there and in the layout. Really cool. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of like like when they're doing like the whole like portal back to their house, it's all like this harsh red, light that's hitting them. And then they get back and Sam's like, "Hey, what happened, guys?" And they're like, "We're having a meeting tomorrow. Big stuff's going down." So yeah, all very funny. Yeah, I think it's doing a great job of like building up this stuff, and the idea that Max and Walter were running in the same circles is very interesting.
Yeah, that's the where it gets me too, where it seems like what they just put at the same high school, and then because we got to feel that these characters were in, like Max seemingly was in these other people's lives, then brought them together, right? So what went different with Walter versus Max? Because it seemed like whatever happened with Max and Norm/Nora back then, it was something that left these huge scars.
Yeah. There's a lot of trauma getting worked through here for sure.
Yeah. So what happened with Walter that changed how they operate? But yeah.
No, great stuff. What you giving Nice House by the Sea?
I'm gonna give this I'll give it the straight 8.
I mean, I think it's at least an 8.5. Do I want to go 9? Art's really good. It adds some layers. I'll go 8.5. I'm just not quite feeling the 9, but it's very close. It's very like on the cusp. All right, that'll bring us on to the final part of the show where we pick our favorite stuff of the week, favorite panel/moment, favorite cover, favorite art, and of course top 5 books. So Matt, what was your favorite panel/moment of the week?
Okay, so there's Absolute Power had some good moments, as did All In.
Yeah, there's a lot of choices just from those two.
Just from those two, but it's like, well, those are kind of expected. Maybe we expect the big moments. But for me, this week there's kind of some of the smaller ones at play. And so I'm debating if I'm going with Birds of Prey or Poison Ivy, because I like those enough. But I think I'm gonna go from Poison Ivy, and it's that Janet and Croc conversation, just because it was not that it came out of left field, but it's showing that Janet is becoming her own person. She's not just attached to Pam, and that she does have, even though that her circle of friends includes this gigantic crocodile man, right? But it shows that she has earned her spot there. So I'll go with that one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the bit in Shazam where he's switching backwards and forwards, and Captain's like saying, "No, tell me how to do this." I thought that was really funny. I think I'm going to go with that. Again, I'm kind of intentionally avoiding the super big like continuity stuff from this.
Yeah.
So, good fun. All right, cover of the week. I did have a look while you're reading Poison Ivy.
Yeah.
I think the main Batman cover's pretty nice actually. I like the simplicity of it. It's good line work. Really nice. Really hard to fault the Jimenez simple white background stuff.
Yep.
All In's got a nice cover. It's hard to fault Sempere doing all the main big characters. I think Shazam's main cover's pretty nice. I think the main cover for Nice House in the Lake's pretty nice. And that was pretty much the ones that were sticking out to me. There was a couple that I thought were going to be great when I saw the little thumbnails, but then when I clicked on it, made them bigger. I'm like, that didn't quite work out as much as I thought it would. So yeah, I think if I'm going to pick one, if I'm going to pick one, I think I'm going to go with just the all-in cover. But it's the image they're promoting their whole next thing with, so it had to be a good bit of art. So yeah, I'll take it. I'll take the Sempere Justice League.
Okay.
So what are you picking?
Yeah. So there's a Birds of Prey that's got, I think it's Sozo Micah, which is Babs, and it's just the purple suit with the yellow cape on this reddish orange background. It just looks really cool. There's another Birds by Serge Acuna. That's all of them, but that was one of those ones that on the thumbnail it looked good, but as you look at it as a comic cover, it kind of I don't know. it gets taken away, the more it gets. Shazam had one that was painted. It was Felipe Massafera.
Yeah.
That one looks really cool. You got the lightning coming out of him, but it's a week with Poison Ivy with the Jenny Frisian cover.
Yeah. Of course it is.
Yeah, it's all bathed in green, and there's some really bunches of bushels of oranges around her that really sets off the rest of the green and red. So yeah, so that's gonna be mine.
Yeah, I hate to point out a bad cover, but there's a cover for Absolute Power by Juliet Nika. Oh, I say that's it. And Supergirl's face on this cover is one of the most disturbing faces I have seen in a comic book cover in a long time. It's unsettling. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like she looks alien, and I know she technically is an alien, but that's not the point.
Yes. No, but that's all the faces though too. They have the almost like a mannequin face.
Yeah,
it's almost like Uncanny Valley.
It's like someone's Botoxed the shit out of her lips and giving her over the top. Like, it's like they're trying to make her look as sexy as possible, but it's actually really terrifying.
Yeah. Real Housewives of what was her city on the show? I forget.
Oh, National City?
There you go. Real Housewives of National City.
Oh dear. Anywho, all right, best art of the week. What you got?
This one's tough because I really want to put over Takara, right?
You can. No one's stopping you, Matt.
Yeah, no, I know, but Basri's art on Birds of Prey was really good too. But then the 1-2 punch for the All-In special, the Sempere, and then even though Craig wasn't, exactly perfect, it matched the tone really well. So that's my main struggle here, because I do feel like Mora, for as good as Mora is, I feel like Absolute Power outside of the shadowy elements with Waller and Dreamer. So I think as much as I want to give it to Takara, I'm gonna give it to the All-In special.
Okay. I mean, I'm going with Nice House by the Sea. I think Bueno's art is just, it's always so moody and atmospheric. It ticks a lot of the boxes for me. And there's sometimes I might pick something else that's sticking out to me in like a more like fun comic booky way. But I feel like there's like a few options like that, and they all kind of cancel each other out. So I'm going with Bueno, because I could easily take All In for the same reasons. I could easily take Mora on Absolute Power, or Jimenez and Batman even. There's a lot of options, but Bueno. All right, top 5 books, Matt.
So we had a lot of them in the same area this week. All right, so I'm going to go number 1, Ivy, 2, Birds, 3, Nice House by the Sea, 4, All-In special, and 5, this one's tough. What do I give 5 to? You know what? I'm going to go crazy here, and I'm going to give 5 to Batman. Yeah. Wild.
Unprecedented.
That's right.
What am I going with? All right, number 1, I will say Birds of Prey. Number 2, I'll say Nice House by the Sea. Number 3, I'll say All In. 4, Shazam. 5, Plastic Man No More. Yep, I feel good about that. To be fair though, I don't think I read any bad books this week.
No, I liked all of mine, and now I say, do I go get caught up with Green Arrow?
I mean, it's a new run to start. You don't have to necessarily.
That's true. That is true. But I'm just trying to keep the good vibes going. That maybe I had a week of good books, I can go back and read some Green Arrow. But,
all right. So I had planned on a Patreon book this week, but next week is quieter, so I will be happily slotting in my next Batman and the Outsiders then. So look forward to that, everyone. But coming up next week, though, in terms of new books from DC Comics, we have Action Comics 1070, which is the start of Waid's 12-issue weekly sort of run on the book, which should be fun. We got Absolute Batman issue 1. We got Batman and Robin 14. We have Batman Gotham by Gaslight, The Kryptonian Age, issue 5. We have DC vs. Vampires World War V, issue 3. We have the Green Lantern Civil Corps Special, issue 1. And then that's it. That's all facsimiles and stuff after. That's a really quiet week too. But hey, we got Waid on action, and we got the big Green Lantern special, and of course issue 1 of the first absolute books. So some exciting things to talk about at least.
And we're enjoying the Kryptonian Age.
Oh, we are. Yeah, we're really liking that.
Yes, and we got Philip Kennedy Johnson on Batman and Robin.
That's true. Honestly, yeah. What's so funny about this is that counting the Green Lantern special is, I mean, it's not a fresh start, but it's like a eventy kind of thing. Gotham by Gaslight Kryptonian Age is the only thing that's not kind of a new start, because Waid's starting on action, Johnson's starting on Batman and Robin, and obviously Absolute Batman's issue 1. Yeah. So it's a lot of fresh starts next week.
I can't get over how big Absolute Batman's legs are. Like, that dude does not. He does like 3 leg days a week, man. Like, it cracks me up. I hope it's good. Yeah. Because I just don't want it to be a meme, you know?
Yeah, so hopefully, if obviously, I think most of the audience do listen to the audio version, but if you watch the YouTube version, hopefully you still are, because there was an hour this week where the YouTube channel got deleted by YouTube.
Oh, yay, way to go.
Right? Due to spam, something, practices, violations, whatever. I appealed it immediately. Apparently, a lot of channels got taken down that day. Okay. It was fixed within the hour. It was put back on very quickly, so I can't complain too much. And it was probably down such a short amount of time that most people probably wouldn't have noticed. Hell, I wouldn't have noticed if I didn't get an email saying, "Hey, your channel's been deleted," and I went, "Wait, what now?"
Right. But just going straight to deletion without a warning seems like a pretty massive thing. You know?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just YouTube being YouTube, but so that happened this week. But anywho, next week should be interesting. We'll see how it all shapes up. But that is the show. So thank you very much for joining us. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications. You can, of course, support the content and help keep it coming over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, which supports this podcast. It also supports all the other stuff I do, such as MailFuzz Movies, podcasts, and the TV reviews over at MailFuzz TV. If you like the idea, if you like horror movies, there's a horror movie podcast on MailFuzz Movies. If you like sci-fi movies, there's one for that. There's Collector's Cut, where we do just different sort of seasons of movies. So right now we're doing 90s erotic thrillers. So Single White Female review went out this weekend. So that was a thing. Yeah, I know. If that's of interest, check it out.
I don't know enough about the erotic thrillers to name one to ask if you were doing it, so, but I guess that's a good thing.
I mean, you know Basic Instinct, surely.
I know Basic Instinct, but like, is Sliver, is that 90s or is that 80s? I can't remember.
Slither?
No, Sliver.
Oh, Sliver. Okay, I was gonna say I thought you said Slither. I was like, that's not erotic thriller, Matt. What are you talking about?
No, I mean, to some people.
I don't know. It's not on our to-do list. I mean, but we're doing Cronenberg's Crash. We're doing Cruel Intentions, Wild Things, Last Seduction, and what was the other one? There's one more. I can't remember, but you get the gist. That was the selection. Oh, Bound. That was the other one.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I know most of those. I'm familiar with most of those.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, that's the show, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. This has been Comics From The Multiverse, episode 427. We'll see you next week. Keep reading DC Comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.